Luckily, that's no longer the case. And there we go. Fleet's Round of Ramblings is underway. There we go. And now we're underway, as per usual. All being well, and everything being well as it is, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes fine. Got my live chat up, got everything else up, and we're ready to rock and roll, as we usually do. Also, shut up, stop talking about being first. I would have been in a really pleasant mood today if I hadn't just been fucked by YouTube making me dance through hoops to get this whole thing started, but... Oh, that's a great, fantastic... It's just typical. And I don't have a pressure valve anymore, so... Whoopee. What's a fella to do anyway? Normal ramble. Yeah, it's a normal ramblings. We don't do anything other than normal ramblings. I say that but. What do you mean but? There is no but. Would you say that the current way nations like Ukraine handle naval dangers is a rebirth of Je ne Cole? No, not really. The only reason that Je ne Cole, the only reason that people are calling it that is because it's not. The only reason Ukraine doesn't have a full-size fleet is that it had other things to spend its money on. The Ukrainian navy prior to the Russian invasion was a fairly potent force with a number of large, powerful frigates and a couple of destroyers. And by that I mean, and by that I mean in 2014, until the Russians walked in and nicked off with half the fucking fleet.
Well, they had a lot of very old frigates and destroyers.
Still, it was
the Russians.
It was a blue water fleet.
The Red Fleet nicked all the good shit, like the nicked Kuznetsov. Because after the declaration of independence of Ukraine, the good stuff, the stuff that's in active service, not in mothball, joined Kuznetsov in joining the White Fleet of the Soviet Union, which then became the fleet of the Russian Federation.
Yeah. Either way, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the Ukrainians did maintain a blue water fleet. A lot of that fleet was sunk or stolen during the 2014 annexation of Crimea, and what remains was scuttled at the start of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The only reason that Ukraine has been actively working to rebuild its blue water capabilities, to become a fleet that can rival the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation. Something that Ukraine would have been capable of doing had, a minor thing called the invasion of Ukraine not happened, and funding understandably had to go to other things, rather than rebuilding the blue water fleet of Ukraine.
I mean, it's arguable that they don't need to rebuild their fleet.
It's better to have something than nothing.
No, they need to rebuild their fleet.
It's not even that. It's
the
Black Sea in the current generation is small enough that you can put missiles in Odessa and shut the entire fucking thing down.
No, you can't.
Which is what has happened.
No, you can't, and no, they haven't.
They have.
They haven't. That's not what's happened at all.
There's a reason the Russians are hiding in Azov.
They're not hiding in Azov from the missile threat. They're hiding in Azov from the drone threat. It's a different thing entirely.
Yeah, it's missiles and drones.
And also, the Black Sea isn't shut down, no matter what the... It's as much as I'd like to go Slava Ukraina. No, it's not. That's not what's happening, Foxo. That's not it at all.
It is.
No, it's not.
If your opponent can't operate due to the fact you're interdicting the seas, you are interdicting the sea.
The Russians can operate, they're just choosing not to, because they gain nothing from operating right now.
Yes, and that is interdiction.
Yeah.
No, Foxo, please stop.
Yep. People called it.
Oh? Oh, fuck's sake. Really?
This is just
Really?
normal. This
He's
is just.
He's
this-
lurking
this
for the
is-
moment.
This
There's
is
already
this is just normal
there's stuff
now.
earlier saying how long before Clark just pops in.
This
for surprise week.
this is just normal now.
When was it?
I
in
have
fact?
accepted this is just normality now. This is my life.
Moe, Dr. Clark waiting by his desk for another surprise drop in 17.
This isn't a surprise anymore. It's not been a surprise for the last 3 times. I've just come.
Technically, it has.
I've just
Because
come.
you've never anticipated it.
No,
or never
I-
been told in advance. It is technically a surprise.
It's a surprise in the same way that a bullet to the face when
Concept
you're
of the
facing.
Russians not needing a navy.
No, the Ukrainians not
That's
needing a navy.
Ukraine.
Right.
But apparently, I'm saying no, Foxo, stop. The Ukrainians do need a fleet. Please, cease.
What I'm saying is that they don't
They
because,
do.
very simply, they're the opponent no matter what, has more resources than them, and they're fighting in a sea that is contested.
I would point out that
They're interdicting with missiles and drones.
Okay,
What
so
would a fleet
here's the
do?
thing. I think the question you actually should be asking is not whether they or not they need a fleet, but what kind of fleet do they need? Because if you consider a fleet only a one-tier thing, like, do they need a fleet like the US Navy? No. They probably don't need aircraft carriers. They probably don't... LHDs, perhaps a smaller one for amphibious operations, will be a good one-stop shop and also give them some other capabilities for something as a long-term acquisition. But in terms of what we're talking about a literal sort of brown-green water navy with some blue water capabilities reflective of the nature of the Black Sea is probably what we're looking at. So what sort of blue water facilities are we probably looking at? Probably submarines.
Yeah, you
Probably want
probably
some SKs.
you're looking.
And they
at-
might want some frigates for anti-submarine warfare and for convoy escort should there be issues in the future.
Yeah,
Because again, escorting crane fleets, I'd love to say you can do that with small ships and missiles and aircraft based ashore, but let's be honest, you usually need at least something with the convoy to go, oh, you're coming in on me. Okay, well, this is a rather easier intercept solution than something coming from over there to try and intercept that coming from over there, trying to attack the point here.
What I would say is I feel like Dr. Clark's hit it right on the money, but I'd like to say that Ukraine can probably afford and is probably going to go for something like you're probably looking at 3 full-size destroyers, basically, so you can have 1 in service, 1 in reserve, 1 in refit, basically to serve as the flag units for the Ukrainian fleet to operate outside the Black Sea with their NATO partners. You're looking at about 4 to
There'll
6
be large
frigates.
frigates. There'll be Type 26 style frigates. They'll be high-end, but they'll be Type 26 style frigates. That's what... It won't be destroyers, because... Again, you're looking at the cost to support it, sustain it, and the crewing scenarios. And if you're looking at it in destroyers, in terms of crewing, you'll be looking at either a Spanish-style destroyer vessel like the Australians have, a Japanese-style or a Korean-style destroyer vessel, or a British Type 83. All of them are going to be too big for what Ukraine needs. So a large ASW frigate is probably far more sensible with a sufficient air defense fit. They might go Canadian-style Type 26, i.e. that sort of style vessel. That's probably actually their best option to go for a one-stop shop frigate. But you're looking for something which is going to be low crewed, but high-end.
Probably.
Because, again, Ukraine is going to be... Okay, I'm going to sound all Peter Sign here, but demographic issues, they're going to be having them for years, even when this war is over. Their population is going to have taken a major hit. No matter what form the end of this war takes, that population on both sides has taken a massive hit. And that is going to have an impact on crewing and manning. I did a video about procurement a couple of weeks ago, I think, back on my channel. And one of the things which has caused surprisingly a large number of private feedback was me pointing out that for nations like Britain, etc., and lots of other developed countries, there is a bit of a crew shortage coming, and this is one of the reasons why uncrewed systems are getting so much investment in them, and why minimization of the personnel taskings is becoming quite so important. It's because there's not actually physically the people for you to actually hire and use. You just can't get them. It's you both have to compete with an economic market where people who have engineering and science skills are really economically in demand and can get paid an awful lot of money. And you also have to deal with the fact that you don't have as many as you used to. You don't have as large a population of coming through proportionally.
Yes.
And Ukraine's going to suffer from that.
I suppose if you got that issue, then why would Ukraine want a fleet in the first place?
You can't have missiles
not-
do everything.
Principally because
And-
they
and
need
not just
principally they need something of about frigate size and large enough, literally because otherwise they're going to, every 5 minutes they're going to have, again, whatever happens after this, they're going to have a large Russian ship, because the Russians are going to have large ships because their ego requires it, turning up and trying to bully them. So they need something of equivalent capability in peacetime to go, really? Bog off.
But that is a secondary defense theater, though, because
But
Ukraine's going to have the issue of
think about it
the
as a
massive
war
land
fighting
border.
issue. Think of it not as a war fighting issue. Think of it as a peacetime conflict management issue, whereby if they show themselves looking weak, the other side is going to interpret that as looking weak, even if they have the capability to do it in other systems, because they can't show up in person with an equivalent ship. The other side's going to interpret that as weakness and think that they can do something.
It's one thing.
Sometimes you literally have to have the policeman walking the beat. They might not beat them. Every time I have this conversation with people, with police especially, they go, well, yes, police walking the beat is not particularly effective as an anti-crime measure. It's very good as a presence measure, as an image measure, and it's something we need to do because of that. But in terms of efficiency of actually fighting crime, it's actually very low on the capability scale.
But you
And it's
still
the
gotta do
same
it.
with having the bigger ship to have as the presence. You have to have it. Because if you don't have it, the other side are going to be stupid.
If you've got something that can at least tell them, we're watching you now, move along.
Yes, it's equivalent enough that it's capable. It's basically a frigate. It will probably, a high-end frigate will probably have enough capability in it that it can go, look, I might not match toe-to-toe with you and you're a cruiser. That doesn't bother me. But I'm big enough you can't ignore me, you can't run through me, and honestly, I'm armed with modern technology which we know works. What are you armed with? Because you might on paper have very good technology, but as we've seen with a lot of Russian scenarios recently, and probably one of the reasons why the finance minister is now the Minister of Defense, not the former Minister of Defense, is because a lot of stuff which was supposed to be fitted to their equipment turned out to be only fitted in paper, and the funds have mysteriously gone off into the ether.
Wow, spooky.
It's just amazing, they've disappeared. And there are people who are going, well, no, that's not the reason. No, that is probably a good reason why so many people are asking the question of, why is a nation which was on paper one of the world's major military powers still fighting this war against what was one of the world's not major military powers years later? Well, here's the reason. May I present to you your Secretary of State for Defense?
Honestly, it feels almost like something from Yes Minister.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Oh no,
one
but
of the-
Humphrey
one of
would
the-
never allow that level of outrageous.
One of the things I like about Yes Minister is, yes, there's incompetence and other bits and bobs, and all the civil servants are doing silly things. But when it comes to actually, like, for example, when in Yes Prime Minister something serious happens, so for example, when a bomb is planted in the French embassy, he bursts in, like, protocol just ignores it, says, a bomb's been planted in the French embassy, the fuck are we going to do about it? Or, for example, you know, like, if the security of the realm's actually at stake, the pretense gets dropped. Like, fucking...
Yes, you do your job.
Yeah.
Quote my favourite YouTuber, the civil service has been waging a century-long guerrilla warfare campaign against politicians. And it's been largely successful.
I love the way they consider it a guerrilla warfare campaign. I know, I'd say it's fully on armored warfare doctrine, but, you know, we can claim it's guerrilla warfare, but guerrilla warfare suggests it's sort of hidden in some way, shape, or form. The only people the only people who seem to pretend it isn't going on are politicians when they're talking to the press.
I guess more
Otherwise,
common man
everyone
might
knows it's going on.
I guess more common man might not necessarily consider it, but
Yeah.
Excuse me, anyone who's ever had any dealing with local council, government, or central government will realise this.
like I wish I could say that, but the amount of idiots, and I do not regret calling them idiots, I've met, especially lately, really says otherwise. When some of them ask, "What's a local council?"
Bracken, where have you been hanging out again?
Oh, I've been doing a training course for warehouse and logistics. And some of the
Where
people
did you
around
go?
there. Some of the people around there are dense as a brick.
Look.
That's an insult to bricks.
Stop being
I don't
rude
know.
about
You could.
brick.
I don't know. You could definitely use some of these people as actual building structural foundations.
That's one way to fix the economic problems.
Ugh.
No, humans are much more expensive to manufacture than bricks, though.
And it takes a far longer
Are you
build
sure?
time.
I mean, but yes, because you sort of need at least 6 years for the skeleton
Let's
to
be
harden.
honest,
and
they're kind of more
manufacture
brick
bricks.
sized when they come
Well,
out.
okay, all right.
Okay,
I'm
super
locking
soft
it
and
down.
squishy and they haven't formed
All right, I'm
properly.
locking it down. I'm locking it down. That's it. I'm locking it down. Nope.
Next, we just need
I'm
some.
seeing how long I can push that till Fleet
No.
Wars are going.
I'm locking it down. I'm locking it down.
You know, all we
Moving
need now
on.
is some servo skulls.
No,
and some Mechanicus out
no, we are
Yes.
not doing an Imperium of Man. No. Forwards swiftly. Next question, please.
there.
For
Praise
God's
the
sake.
Messiah fleet.
So you're
What,
locking
you
it
think
down.
Davies, They uses the camera cherubs that flip around.
Oh,
that
no.
flip
That's
around
the
on-
that's the administratum.
Oh no. Right. Anyway.
Fleet, you've already got a whole bunch of questions, Fleet.
What? I know. I'm just gonna work through them if people would stop bashing my head in with a sledgehammer. Darth Sidious asks, "What realistic
I'm
damage?"
not-
Not bashed your
hungry.
head with a sledgehammer. We've merely opened a small hole with a rock hammer.
What? Anyway, what realistic? Haven't you got bloody build ships, brew ships to do today at some
Brew ship.
point? That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it's not too late, and so I've just been packing up, and I'm supposed to be
So-
also recording tomorrow's video on 845 Squadron and all sorts of things. But I was just chatting, hearing you having trouble over the Russian and Ukraine, and I thought I'd come in and help you out.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm. Anyway, Darth Sidious asks, I'll probably have to return the favour and flip over to your server when Brew Ships fires up, and then you can drag me in. That'd be hilarious. Return the favour for once. Darth Sidious asks, what realistic damage could Bismarck and Prince Eugen have done if they successfully broke into the Atlantic, and how would that impact the war? Well, you've basically just got to look at Operation Berlin, see what the Scharnhorst got up to. With the exception, with the exception now that they might decide to take on a convoy escorted by an R-class if they're feeling if the circumstances present themselves in such a manner that the Germans think they can take that engagement without getting
That's a bit
compromised.
brave, but
Prince Eugen and Turpin.
No, Prince Eugen and Bismarck. Prince Eugen and Bismarck.
Bismarck. Well, see, the trouble is, even with taking on an R-class, and this is the classic problem for the Germans, on paper, they walk there. But any damage they receive is going to cause them problems, because they have a glass jaw. Their entire shtick, their entire modus operandi depends on them being able to move fast. In fact, that's the often forgotten thing about Denmark Straits. It's the damage inflicted probably by Prince of Wales's 14-inch guns, which make, unless Bismarck had turned straight back then and headed home, very unlikely of her to get any chance of getting home.
Yeah.
you okay, Fleet?
Nope.
Please don't die. We need you.
Okay, because I suppose wouldn't it be worse for the Royal Navy if she got out at that point? Convoy commands up and running in Liverpool, and the convoys. Because part of the reason Berlin's less effective is because of they're coordinating the convoys around where they know the raiders are, so the convoys can effectively avoid them.
No, it's Bismarck getting out. Some damage will be done, undoubtedly, but they'll just treat it like they did the sortie by the Scharnhorsts. It's something you factor into your convoy routes,
But my point is, the institution that dealt with that's not built yet.
Operation Berlin was before.
What one?
Was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, never mind. I was getting confused with the other one.
Were you thinking of what's it called?
Well, you think about when they went and
Think of York.
attacked the Rawalpindi.
Yeah.
That was Scharnhorst and Eisenhower.
That was even
Yes.
that was even earlier than Berlin.
Was it?
Yes.
I want to talk about the one where they got chased around by Renown.
But the
I think
thing is
41.
about that one is the interesting scenario for that, considering how well Rawalpindi did. if the Royal Navy had gone through the idea of fitting the armed merchant cruisers with torpedo launchers, which they were considering, especially for Rawalpindi, but a couple others, the range she got to, if she'd launched a salvo of 4 torpedoes from either side at both of those ships, she could have sunk Sharnos and Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Could you imagine
mean,
the propaganda victory from that?
The
Look,
only
Rawalpindi would have
Allied
been gone. There was no way Rawalpindi was coming out of that. But she could have gone taking both Scharnhorst and Eisenhower with her.
one of the
Imagine the
Unless
newspapers.
when a
Single merchant
Captain
ship sinks
Kennedy
2
was,
German
was happy
battleships.
to do that.
the only way that Bismarck and Prince Eugen realistically engage a convoy that's escorted by an R-class is basically Bismarck has to kite the R-class, as in she stays right at the edge of engagement range, following the salvos of the R-class, aka, follow the shell splashes to try and avoid being hit, and basically just ties up the R-class while Prince Eugen goes ham on the merchant ships. So you're not trying to sink the R-class, you're trying to avoid damage but distract it so that Prince Eugen can get in and actually do, the whole reason you're out there in the first place. You're not out there to sink warships, you're out there to sink merchant vessels.
That's supposed.
But
it's
the
not
trouble
a
is,
bigger
there's
thing.
a small problem for that in that scenario.
Why would the R-class leave the convoy?
No, there's a small problem in that scenario, in that you're presuming the R-class doesn't have any friends to call upon.
That's true.
And let's be honest, if there's a convoy valuable enough for an R-class to be escorting it, the heavy escort group which is sitting in the North Atlantic is not going to be that far away from that convoy.
In fact, it's probably already on the tail of the pair of them.
Or somewhere, yes. So any time you spend fighting the R-class is just giving time for whatever nasty object is coming behind it to find you. And that nasty object could be an aircraft carrier loaded with swordfish and some a nice fast capital ship, which was usually King George V, Prince of Wales, Hood, Renown, that sort of thing. The aircraft carriers being Ark Royal, Victorious, those sort of vessels. Not known for being friendly and kind when they find you.
Okay, so my other question about that: what was the idea with Renown and Repulse engaging the Bismarcks? Because I remember that thinking of Bismarck, they're in the area, but they're ordered not to engage once the battleships.
Basically,
Well,
because...
no, that's basically they just decide they've got enough firepower, and if somehow Bismarck gets past them, or a submarine comes in and tries to ambush King George V and Nelson and Rodney, and they have to pull away, then Bismarck might think it's getting away whilst being severely damaged, and then the idea is Renown comes over the hill screaming like a banshee as fast as her engines will push her, and basically goes, "You're not getting away, my lovely."
And of course, there's also the fairly reasonable idea that while there's every likelihood that Renown can win a straight-up gunfight with Bismarck, it's also far too close to an even fight for the RN to be comfortable with. Fair fights are for suckers.
No, they don't think
the other
she's
way
going to
around.
win an even fight with Bismarck on her own. Let's be honest. Renown is a battlecruiser, even a modernized battlecruiser. She's still a battlecruiser. Bismarck is a fast battleship. They do not have any ambitions of her winning that fight on her own. But their theory is that she could have joined the two of them to provide extra firepower, but you don't need to do that. But what you do by holding her back is if Bismarck gets severely damaged, which he probably will do, by the King George V and Rodney, but manages to get away due to submarines coming into the area, and so they have to pull back because they don't want to lose them to torpedoes, then Bismarck ain't getting away. Because a severely damaged Bismarck is not surviving an encounter with Renown.
So it's kind of like a hunting dog strategy then.
Yes.
Like, yes, an elk might spear a hunting dog, but a wounded elk that's been running for a long time, that's a different story.
How do you know
In a
this?
sort of.
Because
Why are
I'm
you
pretty sure
asking?
she's
Why
done,
do I know that?
I'm pretty sure she's done hunting.
I have 2 hunting dogs.
Fair enough.
And she's also got a rifle. Like,
Oh yes, I keep forgetting the Foxo's armed.
Anyway, I
Lazy.
need to be getting off for half an hour, so.
Ah, fair
bye.
enough. Lazy Author-san asks, what if Tirpitz had finished her commissioning in time for Operation Rheinebung? Well, now that is an interesting pickle. I know, obviously, we know full well that that's not possible owing to the way the Germans worked up their ships. But, if by some miracle...
They commission them and then actually test them and find out what's wrong with them.
Yeah, but if we assume that...
If we just hand wave that.
Yeah, if we hand wave it for a second, and we've got both Bismarck and Tirpitz commissioned and then, as the rest of the world knows it, commissioned and worked up at the same time. If you've got both of those ships available, that's a strategic quandary for the RN. It's not that they can't deal with it. It's just that they're going to have
Wouldn't
to...
they just dispatch more ships? Like,
It's
they've
not-
got the ships in the area, theoretically.
That's the thing, theoretically. Because there's also...
Well, so...
Because it's
It's not a strategic quandary as you'd understand it. As we put it, it's a very different scenario. You see, if the... For starters, you've got to deal with it's an intelligence battle as well. So part of the British assessment is based on what they know the Germans are bringing out. So the British know there's roughly there's at least a capital Bismarck and a heavy cruiser. They know that's the probable arrangement, and so they're happy to go with 2 capital ships per group because that should be more than enough firepower to deal with a heavy cruiser and a capital ship. But if you have a scenario that they go, oh, there's 2 capital ships come out, are there 2 heavy cruisers with them, or is there 1 heavy cruiser with them? How have they allotted that? So you're going to have to factor that into. Let's say they go with a scenario of two capital ships, 2 heavy cruisers. Then how does the Royal Navy work that out? How are they going to balance that? They're going to turn up with 2 heavy capital ships and 2 heavy cruisers? No. They're going to start trying to put together groups of 4. What are the 4 ships they have that can keep up with them as a fast group? That's going to be King George V, Prince of Wales, Hood, and Renown. So they're going to get gathered together for this, which means Force H is being pulled up, which means probably you're going to have Ark Royal and Victorious tagging together, which means you're going to have a combined task force hunting. Now, that's going to cause a problem because you aren't able to spread out and cover as many spaces, so you're going to have to position them so they can respond.
Yeah.
That is the problem, but it's not a quandary because how do you deal with that? Well, then your capital ships, i.e. Nelson, Rodney, probably Nelson and Rodney, if they're of them are available, and R-Class probably each get get some convoys, or maybe you have the slow group form up with the convoys. So there might be a mega convoy sailing with Nelson, Rodney, and a couple of R's. In which case, that's a convoy which I wouldn't like to run into. It'd be the dream to engage, size-wise, because of the amount of damage you could cause. But there again, there's also Nelson, Rodney, and a couple of R's there.
And of course,
in which case,
if you've got that many
your
capital
Tirpitz
ships...
your Tirpitz, Bismarck, and a couple of heavy cruisers are probably not going to be having fun.
And I mean, even
They sort of start
and of course-
panicking a tad.
and of course,
Like, nope,
even-
we're not
even-
engaging this.
even for the U-boat arm, that convoy's not heaven because of the amount of capital assets in the area. That necessitates it's not just flowers, rivers, and everything else with that convoy. No. The RN's fleet destroyers are with that convoy because the RN's heavy units are with that convoy, and there's a lot of them.
That's the thing that's often forgotten. When the R-Class are along, there's usually a couple of destroyers along. Proper destroyers.
Yeah.
Go, hello! Have you met our torpedoes? They're 21 inches of fun for everyone.
No, but what I was trying to say is it's not gonna. This super convoy isn't going to be an easy target for a wolf pack or even a mega wolf pack either.
No. And
I don't
also,
even think
let's
it's a
be honest, they are
target.
going
It's
to
too
break
dangerous.
every rule about Enigma management to get that convoy through. That convoy is going to be routed and rerouted.
Yeah, there's
And
no...
they've got a perfect excuse for them rerouting it because, we heard, we think there might be the surface raiders there. So the Germans are not going to be surprised by that convoy making erratic moves.
No.
There's a very legitimate reason for them to believe, and as we know, the Germans are great at inventing reasons for why Enigma is not, why the British are doing what they're doing, and Enigma not being broken.
I mean, to be fair, it wouldn't surprise me if you have a hunt. There was a variation on what you've said will happen. I think you'd have the home fleet forming up around Prince of Wales, King George V, Hood, and Victorious, and then you'd have Force H coming up to distance screen this mega convoy.
No.
Because that means you can put a carrier
Renown
with the
can't take them
convoy.
on. Renown can't take man in. You don't want to arc roll that convoy.
Oh no, they're not with the convoy. Like you've got
No,
the convoy
you
with
do
the
not.
R's and the.
Arc Royal is not what you would. There are reasons why you wouldn't put Arc Royal that convoy, or even in a covering position of that convoy, because it would just make it too slow. Her entire survivability is speed. Every time she slowed down, that's when she ended up with torpedoes aimed at her. It was not good.
Can't you?
What you are more likely to get as a carrier is because remember at that point, Eagle is still wandering around.
Isn't she in the Far East?
No,
Oh no, so that's Hermes.
You're thinking of Hermes.
That's Hermes. Sorry.
you're thinking of Hermes. Eagle's still wandering around. So are Furious. Let's be honest. If there's going to be any carriers attached to that convoy,
It probably
it's going to be
wouldn't
Furious and Eagle.
it might just be Eagle to be fair, because Furious again. If she slows down, she's a bit buggered, but Eagle can't really speed up. So,
Yeah,
and to be fair, all you
but there
need,
again,
all you
no,
need is
no
Eagle.
one really cares that much about Furious.
Yeah,
But let's be honest, if you have Furious and Eagle with the convoy, then they have an air bubble around them.
yeah,
And then if you have Victorious and Arc Royal with the attacking group, then good luck to the Germans.
yeah,
Because, as we all know, the Swordfish's great ability is that it flies slow enough that the Germans have trouble tracking up their guns.
yeah. That's very true.
And I did have a conversation with someone which was literally, that can't be true. And I went, it's not actually a mechanism problem. There was a discussion about being mechanism and all sorts of issues. No, it was actually the aircraft they trained on. They're all trained to track faster moving aircraft than Swordfish.
Yeah.
So they're automatically, their training
Bang,
moving
bang,
faster.
bang. Well, we're hitting the bang, bang, bang. We're not hitting the bang, bang, bang. Basically.
So you have to keep almost.
Well-
It's actually quite. If you think about it, if you train for air to air for surface anti-air engagements, and you think
There you
about it, you are reacting at such high speeds. You're doing a lot of it from your training and instinct and muscle memory,
Yep.
and so you end up moving too fast. Then you have to correct yourself and it can add in a lot of delays to the thinking and to the work of it.
Yeah, of course. It's gonna absolutely put a kibosh on your aiming.
Okay, so I'm just looking. Eagle was in Sierra Leone when Operation Renabon was occurring,
Oh.
so she could
Yeah.
so she could probably make it
Yeah,
if she
Let's be honest,
really used her
if they-
engines to all their worth.
I mean,
if they
I mean,
needed it, they could get that.
I mean, to be fair, she wouldn't even have to use her engines all that. Because remember, the British prep to counter Rheinebung starts the moment they get wind that the German ships
Yeah.
are on the move in the Baltic.
But then
So-
again, while that is early, the Eagle does still have to go a reasonable distance because she's still on her
No,
way
no.
back
Oh,
from
no,
the
she
Indian
does.
Ocean.
Oh no, she does. But here's the thing: Eagle flat out does 24 knots.
Was Furious here.
Thing is, Eagle flat out will do 24 knots. She can quite happily get there touching 1920. She's not going to have to burn her engines out to get home. Because she'll normally cruise at about 16 to 17. If she's pushing herself for high speed cruise, she'll go up to 20, 21. Flat out, she's 24. She's not going to burn her engines out. She can get there.
And also, by the looks of it, Furious also probably would be able to get involved.
Again, Furious will probably join the strike force because she's a faster carrier.
So,
She isn't going to work to the air group at this point, so that's she. If you're going to put ad hoc air group, you put her under convoy.
Probably.
because by this up until this point, she's been escorting. She's been basically just a ferry,
Yeah.
just trying to get planes from area to
So
area.
you're basically
from
what you'd be
Malta.
doing is you've been chucking aircraft on her
Yep.
and going operate. So you don't want to use that as part of your strike package because.
Yeah.
But as the convoy group, she can work out quite happily with them, and if anyone comes in close range, well, she's got enough firepower to cause them to have a bad day.
Mm-hmm. Basically, Operation Rheinebung is probably going to result in both German heavy units being sunk, if they sortie.
Yeah,
Most likely.
A bad day to be in the Kriegsmarine.
I would say it
well-
actually gets worse than that, because what you're dealing with in a scenario of you force the British to bring more force, and it actually if they manage to connect and those two forces connect with each other, if you're doing a scenario where you've got King George V under the command of Tovey, and you've got Prince of Wales, so King George V is going to be at the front with Tovey. Then you're going to have the battle cruisers, Hood and Renown following on. Tovey will be at the front.
Yeah. Also,
Actually, how-
And that means it matches up. And let's say even if the Germans switch round, then you've got 28 14. Hang on, no. Let's see. 20 14-inch guns and 14 15-inch guns versus 16 15-inch guns and 16 8-inch guns.
what I will also say is
and
that
also, let's be honest, Tovey is the type who doesn't believe in breaking protocol. So those county-class cruisers he'll have with them, and he will probably have a 2 to 4 heavy large cruisers, maybe town class, maybe mix of towns and counties. They won't be holding off and sitting off one side to give him cleaner shot for firepower. No, he'll probably call them in and have them attack from the other side to bracket. And probably knowing Tovey as well, because he is a all-arms kind of admiral, that's the way he likes to roll, he'll order his destroyers in.
what I will also say,
And he'll probably have them attack from the bow.
yeah. Also, God help the Germans if some bright spark admiral, or God forbid Adolf Hitler himself, decides, you know what would be a great idea, let's sortie the Scharnhorst from Brest as well. That's a fantastic idea.
Would they have? Here's what, because
They were really not in a good situation to be in, to be done. Let's be honest, their work was being done on them by French dockyard workers.
Really? The Germans didn't have the idea to bring dockyard workers from Germany over? You know, to
They're
actually
kinda
make sure
busy
the
in
work
Germany.
gets done?
They're kind of busy in Germany, aren't they? Though, Fleet.
I don't know.
Also-
Don't look at me. I'm discount Drakenfell. I'm not the actual man
Also,
himself.
Fleet.
I don't
Also, Fleet. Think of it this way: do you want to put your now relatively valuable dockyard workers in an area that really do not like the Germans at the moment? This sounds like a quick way for your dock workers to start disappearing.
Perhaps.
Also, where are you getting them from?
Oh, that's a fair point.
Which port, which space do you want to take those workers from? And then you've got to load them up on trains. And let's be honest, that company suddenly becomes a very special, very useful train. And intelligence-wise, SOE, the Royal Air Force, there are lots of people who are very interested in taking out trains. Any tribal class destroyer, which here's the mention of a choo-choo.
Yeah.
Actively,
Hey,
just sort of
leave
ears
the
perk
French
up.
locomotives alone. Leave them where you want to kill the Kriegslocks, that's fine, but leave the French locomotives alone.
Look, they were equal opportunities class. They took out North Korean trains. They took out Norwegian trains taken over by Germans. They took out German trains. They took out French trains, Italian trains.
Yes.
Basically, that class. The only reason they took out more enemy destroyers than trains is because of Narvik.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for the Third Battle of Narvik, they would have more trains to their score than enemy destroyers.
Oh, and of course, you know, there's the whole thing with Narvik that, like, just to add insult to injury, there's also Warspite there, literally with turrets firing under local control at point blank range.
Then, to be fair, honestly, German destroyer efforts always seem to end with something going wrong half the time.
Well, the thing...
Because then you've got the incident where the German Air Force decided to attack the German destroyers,
the thing with
and they managed to sink 2 of their own destroyers, I think, if I remember correctly.
The thing with Narvik is that you can understand why the Kriegsmarine committed the destroyers. They're fast, they're quick, you know, they can get up there, get back. Like, there was the least risk involved to sending them to
I get
Narvik.
that. But I also then see, you really want to be putting your fast, agile ships in areas they cannot be fast nor agile,
Well, that...
which is mostly notably the fjords.
Well, that
See,
basically...
the whole thing is
it
they're
doesn't...
supposed to be refueled and able to extract themselves, but the trouble is, something happened to their supply ship.
Yeah, we know that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happened.
In particular, just to confirm, that you're referring to, was it Altmark, was that, or was that a different...
No.
thinking of?
The Altmark was a...
No, the Altmark was not their supply ship. The Altmark
Yeah,
is a different incident. That was the supply ship
Yes,
for Graf Spee, which had a
Mm.
lovely incident inside Norwegian territorial,
Yes,
internal
that's
waters.
why I was just...
Not
that-
even Norwegian territorial waters, internal waters. In
That's the one I was
Jossenfeld.
just double-checking it, where a rather angry tribal decided to show why you don't mess with people.
No, basically, Altmark decided it was going to try and body slam HMS Cossack. And HMS Cossack used that moment to carry out the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean boarding that has been carried out by the Royal Navy, i.e., swinging across on ropes.
Which has got to be an interesting thing to look back on, say, post-war, and you would go, wait, what do you mean we're the only one who's done a boarding action in, like, the past 60 years?
No, it's more fun when you start talking to students about it, and they're going, "Oh, it must be Age of Sail." They're all trying to think up the fingers of the 1860s and this, and you go 1940, and they're looking at you going, "What the frigate, 1940?" But we had machine guns in that time. Yeah, didn't
Yeah, but
stop the
you also
Royal
have-
Navy.
You also have shotguns in close-range combat.
Yeah, fun
Or
time.
just
It's
a
also
gun.
it's still a debate as to whether or not they had swords or not, and I think, to me, the answer for that problem lies in the fact that there were some of the boarding parties came from a cruiser which was having a lot of sickness, and that cruiser, as most of its crew were reservists, and reservist crews are notoriously historic and traditional. So at this period, so if anyone was to be carrying a sword, they would be. And you have some, of course, the destroyer crew are part of the boarding action as well. And so the dispute is when you talk to destroyer personnel, their history, none of them remember carrying a sword. None of them say they were carrying a sword. They just weren't. The destroyer crew, they're not carrying a sword. And then the story comes from the cruiser side. And so there's a dispute because you talk to the Cossacks, are part of the Tribal Destroyer Association, they're going, no, none of us were carrying swords. But the accounts don't come from their side. They come from the cruiser reservists who were aboard, who were as extra boarding teams. And
Also
you sit
just
there and
the
go,
idea of
I think I
Cossacks
know
with
where this
swords.
story might be coming from, and I think I know why this might be the case.
Yeah. What was it? Oh yeah. I think. Yes. Here we go. Trying to use my brain to find. Here we go. Darcidius asks, "How does Tirpitz's AA armament before her sinking compare to Allied battleships' AA armament during the same time?" So.
It's interesting to get a Sith Emperor asking a question. It's really nice to hear they can learn.
Oh yeah, Darcidius is just he's been the
Well, that's the whole.
he's been the
That's
most
the whole
loyal.
thing. The Sith learned it from the rule of two.
Yeah, he's been the most loyal supporter of the dry dock, which does concern me because I feel like we're gonna get thrown off a balcony into a bloody reactor.
Well,
Or going to
This is-
find out that you are actually the true Lord of the Sith.
Do you really want me to have the power to rule a galaxy? Because I can
Yeah,
promise you things will be very different.
Fleet, if you do that, I'm sorry, I've got a clone battalion on standby with 7 Imperial Star Destroyers.
Don't
Oh,
make
that's
me
fine.
start
If
the
it's
mediator
the
printer
Imperial
again,
Star
Dragon.
Destroyers, that's
I'll
fine.
do it.
Wait.
I'll do it. I'll start the mediator printer.
Eclipse Online.
Give me a couple of Venators, I can take out those 7 Star Destroyers in like 5 minutes.
What a bet.
Oh,
Don't-
gentlemen,
I-
please, gentlemen, we're getting sidetracked
While the
here.
Venator was a good ship, the Imperial
we-
Star Destroyer far exceeded its capabilities in all but carrier capacity.
Oh boy.
And I have no intention of actually getting into a stand-up fight with any of them, but I will defeat them all.
Anyway,
I would then
Gentlemen.
suggest the Thrawn Spencer.
oh
This is why we have
no.
Invictus.
Oh,
You've got 2 people who like Star Wars here talking.
I'm also here, but we're getting sidetracked from the actual question that we've been asked. Can we get through that before we go on to Star
It's-
Wars?
yeah. As I recall, it's a bit mediocre, isn't it? It's got a lot of barrels, but
You're
they're
looking
not
at.
necessarily
Probably
great.
you have the German AA guns, and the naval AA
Like-
guns are really
Well, the only
intrigued.
the only
Don't you
saving
still, she still has the 37s.
the only saving grace for Tirpitz by 44 is that the breech loaders are finally fucking gone.
Are they? I genuinely am
Yes,
not sure.
by 44 the
Right.
breech loading 37s are finally fucking gone from Tirpitz.
Okay.
Are you sure about that?
Actually, then again,
Fairly certain.
you say that from what I'm giving a very quick reading here. Apparently, the ones that were still in use in Tirpitz were still breech loaders.
I'm fairly certain she lost her. I'm fairly.
I'm going to try and see what I can find. But
Your fleet. Oh, there's still some Iron Brew left in this bottle.
Hmm.
where am I looking? Is that Germany?
Might be, but I'm sure
Anti-aircraft guns.
I'm sure I've seen it somewhere that she's been Like, I don't trust Wikipedia for obvious reasons, because it doesn't show it doesn't show the minutiae of
Look,
refits
in
she
my
would have had
opinion,
in later life.
Wikipedia is maintained by two groups of people who are obsessed with being right about German ships.
What I
Wereboots,
can
who
tell-
are absolutely certain that everything the Germans did was amazing, and people who people who are obsessed with being technically right.
So from what I can find, Fleet, no, Tirpitz never got the improved ones.
Oh. Well, in that case, then, the answer's quite clear. Her AA armament is very much insufficient.
Ironically, the ships that
Right.
did were Scheer, Lutzow, Nürnberg, Koln, Type 35 and 37 torpedo boats, and their U-boat fleet.
Well, okay. Tirpitz' AA was rubbish then, basically. If you want to know Darth Sidious, her AA armament was, quite frankly, not up to snuff.
To be fair, right, the 37s aren't her only AA, admittedly.
Yes, but
I'm not going to discount the horde of 20 mil.
We've been, yeah, but as we said before, by the time you get into 1944, by the time you get into 1944, 20 mil is It's the reason why by 44 you're seeing 20 mil disappear from Allied ships, because at that point you're at a point there where aircraft are dropping their ordnance from far enough away that the 20 mil might shoot the aircraft down, but by that point it's already dropped its
To be
ordnance.
fair, by that point, the 20 mil is for most ships the "we're about to get hit" warning.
I thought a lot of ships at that point were still having it added on, but that was more
Yes,
not to
but
be. It's just an extra gun sort of thing.
Dragon. There's also a lot of ships which have machine guns today, where they still do AA. Still do AA gunnery practice with them, even for the U.S. Navy, Royal Navy, and everyone knows that if you're using the machine gun for AA,
Something's gone wrong.
it'd either be very, very small drones, or we are refighting San Carlos. And that was not a good scenario. Although, for San Carlos, let's be honest, some 40mm pom-poms would have been absolutely lovely. Both of us would have been spectacular, but I'd settle for 40mm pom-poms.
Yeah, but basically this is the reason why, let's say, Tirpitz's AA is thoroughly inadequate for 1944, but by the time she died.
Yeah.
Let me see, other questions that are actually addressed to the panel. Here we go. Darth Sidious asks, bloody hell, he's really getting his numbers in today. What if after the news of Mez el-Kabir, the situation in Alexandria had escalated into a fight? What would the end result be? A lot of sinking...
It would have been sunk very quickly.
but also some damage to the RN, but nothing majorly sinking.
The difference is the RN guns were all loaded and ready to fire. The crews were all at station. The French would have had to get... If the French had even twitched to start arming them, moving their crews to their ships, British guns would have been pointed at them. And if they started turning, bang, at close range.
Yeah,
'Cause
probably.
what was in Alexandria at this point?
Yeah.
Just because what ships were actually present in Alexandria at this point in time?
One French battleship, Paris, I believe.
Yeah, Paris and Corbeil apparently, as well as Triomphant, Leopard, and 8 torpedo boats. But what else was there?
That's it.
So what were the British assets at the time? I meant what British stuff was there to shoot them back.
You're looking at the entire... A lot of the strength of the Mediterranean fleet, because the force that goes to the force that goes to Mez el-Kabir is not the Mediterranean fleet.
Oh, yeah, that is a very dead French fleet.
Yeah. Dr. Reaper asks, what if Nagato went on 10 go instead of Yamato? She's dead. She's dead in about 5 minutes. She is dead. She's dead. She's dead. She's deadly dead. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, Chief. If Yamato couldn't survive
it's just dead. You can stop with dead. There is no greater version than dead. So you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't more of the point about Tenko is trying to use the symbol of Japan to do something, so they probably wouldn't want to use Nagato?
No, it was down to practicality. Yamato was the only ship that had the
biggest armor, sort of most durable.
Yeah, she was the only ship that was fast enough, durable enough to do the operation.
Have a chance.
Yeah. Nagato didn't have a chance. The last remaining Congos were in too bad a shape to do it. Basically, that was the whole
Well, to be
reason.
fair, we see what happens to Yamato. I think that same sort of firepower, but against something smaller, is not going to end well.
There is always an argument put forward that some of the Japanese Navy were chucking away assets at that point to stop people thinking that they could actually continue to hold off the Allied forces.
Hmm.
That was an interesting discussion, which was it was basically they will have an honourable end, and also it will stop people thinking that we can actually keep holding them off to try and bring about the negotiated end of the war.
Yeah. Darth Sidious, with the best will in the world, Willie D. Porter can't sink the Iowa. She fires a single torpedo. I don't care where on the Iowa that torpedo hits. It's not going to do enough damage to sink her. There's no...
No, but it can do enough damage to embarrass the Americans.
Absolutely, but it's not going to sink the Iowa.
No, but if it hit between the prop shafts, you'd have a jolly nasty problem to deal with.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't still have Iowa around today. Because, let's be honest, she'd have had so much damage done to her prop shafts that she'd have basically it'd be more expensive to repair her than it would be to finish off one of the other of her class.
Yeah.
So you probably still have 4 Iowa class surviving to this day, but Iowa wouldn't be one of them.
Yeah, basically. But that's about it. That's the only real difference here. It doesn't fall away. There's no instance where an Iowa not being there is going to drastically change the outcome of the Second World War, or change it at all, to be blunt.
No.
Because
that's the trouble when you're dealing with. It's sometimes difficult trying to explain this because people like to put it as Britain versus Germany or something like that. It's the British Empire and it's the Americans versus them. That's the alliance we're talking about, the British Empire. And that's the trouble. You are dealing with so much resources across that empire. You're dealing with so much. And from America, that every time you take something out, there's another 10 things coming. And you run out of things before they do. And the trouble is when people start pushing... The big joke I always use is people go, well, you know, Montgomery had been told that the British Army in Europe was the biggest it was ever going to be when he went to when D-Day happened, etc. And I went, yeah, but you're missing the full quote of the stats of the win. It was a case of, right, this is as much British personnel as we can have. We have the Canadian ones coming in. We can start. We can't at the moment recruit the Indian ones because they're in Burma, and we've got the forces of British forces in India, and the Australians and New Zealanders are also doing that in Malaya and Burma and that sort of area. So yes, so we're mobilising the African armies. And we're training them up and starting to bring up. And they're going to be able to be deployed to either one or the other 1946 onwards. And that's the problem you're dealing with. That's the scenario you're dealing with. And no, it's colonial powers through and through. So please don't get me wrong, it's anything great or enlightened. But it is. That is the problem you're dealing with if you are Germany or Japan. You're ultimately dealing with someone who has access to a lot more resources than you do. And are able to get those resources. Japan might get the Dutch East Indies. That's great. They have so much fuel on paper. Try getting that fuel to Japan. Oh, there's a lot of Royal Navy and US Navy submarines in the way.
Yeah.
Doing an operation which frankly makes the Battle Atlantic look like a picnic.
Yeah, that's about right.
Mainly because, and this is nothing against the people who survived Battle Atlantic, because they did a really hard row. But the fact is, the Japanese were far slower to convoy, far less able to convoy, especially with the arguments going on between the army and the navy, and who were trying to run separate convoys, and you ended up with a nightmare of a scenario.
Basically.
Oh, pizza's done. So I'm going to love you, leave you. I hope you have a lovely rest of the conversation. There's always plenty of cool questions on here. And as said, Yeah, I don't do brew ships through Discord. Mainly because I have enough trouble dealing with the questions coming in on YouTube. But dealing with them on Discord as well, I'd just go nuts. It's like I tried to do it once with Twitch and YouTube at the same time, and there were just so many questions coming in from different chats and different conversations going on. It just confused the life out of me. So I just
You
stick
need
to
to
YouTube.
just focus on one.
You are very brave, Fleet, for doing both. You have
I
my
try.
undying admiration for doing both. So I'm gonna say, hope you have a good time, good questions, and yeah, I will probably end up back
If-
again next week because you
by,
know.
by the way, Dr.
Well,
Clark, if
I hear
Ramblings...
I'm listening to it and thinking I might as well turn up and chat.
Hey, by the way, if Ramblings does finish within a reasonable time frame, I'll be watching.
Oh goody! Well, as a rule, it usually lasts about 4 hours, and it's starting at 8 o'clock this evening. So, yeah, he might finish before me. Might.
Possibly. I'll poke you if I finish
There you go.
early. Ugh, good times. Oh dear. Where were we? If Maximilian von Speer was able to return his navy in any port before the Falklands, where would he have been safest? Doesn't matter. Whatever you like. If a fleet's interned, it's interned. Out of the conflict. Safe. Doesn't matter where it is. If he's choosing to intern, it doesn't matter where. He'll be safe. Cvix, how would Gneisenau in its first configuration? Bow is still straight, so no Atlantic bow perform against Strasbourg. Scharnhorst and Gneisenau versus either Dunkirk or Strasbourg. You basically flip a coin. If it's a one-on-one fight, you flip a coin because they're very evenly matched ships at that point. And it's basically down to luck and circumstance. As far as I'm concerned, you can't call that either way. Do you think the US became a major naval power when they defeated the Spanish in the Spanish-American War? Absolutely. The bow just made them more seaworthy in the Atlantic. It was less of a seaworthiness thing, and it was more of a... It was stopping spray crashing over the bow in heavy seas to prevent the turrets from jamming. But in combat, it probably wouldn't cause enough of a problem to actually... Like, we're talking, it was causing problems after a long voyage. If von Spee makes it back to Germany, you're basically looking at him taking over the High Seas Fleet. He's the most senior admiral. He's also the most experienced. There's a reason why he was out in East Asia, and that's because he was the senior admiral. He was one of the most senior admirals in the German fleet, which meant he could speak for the, German fleet and out in the Far East. He can make command decisions without having to report to his superiors. You needed that sort of independence of command when you're out on the China station, and you're not going to get advice from your superiors until later. It's also worth pointing out the most important thing here is basically, well, that it doesn't matter that the armored cruisers. It does mean that the cruisers coming back. It does mean that the Kriegsmarine can probably form up a second scouting group with the armored cruisers. So our first scouting group be the battle cruisers, and second scouting group be all of the armored cruisers they now have, which is about 4 to 5 ships. Additional scouting assets, but again, doesn't really change much. You basically von Spee is a more aggressive admiral, but that's about it. In terms of actually spitballing what would actually happen, he'll probably use the High Seas Fleet more aggressively. What that will lead to, can't really say, because it's hard to know what command decisions he'd make or wouldn't make. But you're basically looking at a more aggressive High Seas Fleet. Darth Sidious asks, opinion on the service of Lear Corps 10, success or failure? I'd argue they were no more or less successful than any other naval strike unit from any of the powers involved in the conflict. Some big ships hit, some big ships not hit, some convoys hit, some convoys not hit. They went and they did a job. They were mostly successful, but they didn't win the Mediterranean War, so you could argue they were a failure. But again, same thing. It's all nuance. You can't really call them successful or a failure. They just were. They were doing a job, fighting a war. That's about it.
You're blitzing through these questions.
Somebody's got to.
You're running out of questions.
Is cereal a
Is
soup?
cereal-
I
God.
refuse to answer that question. Moving on.
I said you kind of blitzed through them all.
If Italy was as industrialized as Germany in 1935, what would change in their fleet? Not much. Italian naval industry was one of the more developed sides of their economy. You're looking at a building capacity that's actually superior to the Germans, and actually superior to the French. The Italians actually had dockyards far bigger than they were using, because Italian shipbuilding was, well, fairly popular. They built a lot of large liners, a larger number of merchant ships. You'd be talking about deindustrializing Germany, Slayer, if you're talking about Italy being as industrialized as Germany in 35. Actually, no, you're not. You're basically talking not much, honestly. How many escorts do you recommend for a battleship that's in the fleet in being role?
This depends on the escort, doesn't it?
It depends on the
'Cause
escort.
it
depends on
yeah.
depends on the escort. Depends on the mission. Depends on the battleship itself. Depends on what you want to do with it. Depends on any number of factors. If you want to be blunt about it, you're basically looking at how do I describe this? Bloody hell. But yeah, basically, as I said, it depends on a wide variety of factors. And it's not really a question. I can just answer with a simple, flat answer, basically.
It comes down to a lot of it depends.
Yeah. My wife asked, what's your recommended combat width for an infantry division? Don't look at me. I just build whatever I like in
I believe
Hoi 4.
currently it's 24 to 20, 24, 27, and 30.
Ignore Dragon.
40
There is no combat width. Reject the meta. There is no combat width. Reject the meta.
They asked, what's the recommended?
Reject the meta.
Also,
Do what you like.
technically speaking, they're not meta, they're just recommended. Metas go into far more complex detail.
Question: if an early IR camera or targeting pod came into service in 1965, could it be useful in fighting the VC in Vietnam? Yes, it would. It would absolutely be of a massive
All of a
help.
sudden, you have now a lot more things able to be seen.
That may actually change the entire course of the Vietnam War, because you may actually be able to properly interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Like, that may actually change the entire course of the Vietnam War. In a big way.
More of these US nuclear weapons in Vietnam? Bad things. Like, the US would definitely look like the offensive party to the rest of the world. You just nuked them. Or, honestly, unless you could find some sort of hell of a good reason, the idea of dropping a nuclear weapon on Vietnam? Also, where are you dropping this? North or South Vietnam? Because if you drop it on the south, you've effectively just nuked your allies. Well, quote-unquote allies. And if you use it in the north, you've just used a nuclear weapon on a hostile power.
There is no reason
Like-
or justification for the use of an atomic weapon in Vietnam. None. Tactically, it makes
Yeah.
no sense. Strategically, it makes no sense. There is no...
Strategically, it could be suicide.
It's not even that. Strategically, it makes no sense.
Oh yeah, no, entirely agreed. Like, no one's saying it's... so far from what I can tell, everyone's saying it is bad.
Yeah.
But
Slayer.
if they did do one strategically, yeah, you've kicked off potentially World War III.
no,
Or at least got
no.
a lot of...
No, it wouldn't be kicking off World War III. You'd be looking.
Well, actually, it wouldn't be World War III. It might be others looking at you very aggressively.
Yeah, you're looking at sanctions, possibly. You're looking at alienation of NATO allies and partners. You're looking at it's
Diplomatically, there's not really any
Yeah.
way to come back from it.
No. Question from the Med 3. Battalion guns are accurate, so the mean bracketing like cruisers at Lucas Range doesn't just remain bracketing. All 4 Littorios were in service by 1940, with Aquila entering service in 41. Italian High Command is more aggressive with their larger fleet. How does things change? If all
More
4
ships than the Med, probably.
No, if all Littorios were in service by 1940, all 4 at the bottom of Taranto. Dr. Clark has said very clearly that Taranto...
Which also means they'll probably be refloated, because Taranto is light at least. But
Yeah,
it means you're not getting any of the older ships back in service, and you've got all of your dockyards of any variety being used to try and get them going again.
Yeah, you've got all of the four older ships
Actually-
the four older ships will survive most likely because
Yeah,
they'll be
but they'll
in
be
the
left.
harbour.
They'll probably be refloated, but not really refitted. I guess actually maybe yeah, if they are out there.
Yeah, because the Littorios will have to be in the outer harbour because that's the only place that they
which
can
is
store
bad.
them in Taranto. Like, as Dr. Clark has said, Taranto is devastating to the Italians always. If you've got all four Littorios, the British may bring in Furious and do a 2-carrier strike, which at that point basically hammers home Taranto even fucking harder. Which honestly, having the four Littorios out of action for a bit is probably saving the Italian fuel logisticians a fucking headache, because operating 8 battleships on Italian fuel reserves is fun times. The Aquila arriving in 41 does change the game a bit. It does mean that the Italian fleet has organic air support, because as anyone who's operated a fleet or anything else will tell you, having aviation assets that you can sortie under your own command and are with the fleet is massively more useful. This whole thing of, yes, you don't need a carrier because you have land-based air bases is bullshit and always has been. Having a carrier with the fleet that can provide air cover for the fleet near constantly, provide organic scouting to the fleet and organic strike to a fleet is infinitely more valuable than any number of land-based air bases. Because by the time you get word off to a land-based airbase and get their aircraft up and underway, if you're dealing with a convoy, it's different, because convoys usually follow a certain path, and it's far easier. They don't move as quickly. It's far easier to predict where they're going to be when you get there. But if you're dealing with a surface fleet, coordinating any meaningful strike above a single airfield is impossible.
But it's not, though.
But it is. You see it multiple times in the Med. You see...
Yeah, but it's. But you also see them doing it repeatedly. It gets a lot better the later the war goes on as communication improves. Because to counter your point about the organic air defense, yes, technically having a carrier that's fully ready to go and has aircraft in the air is better air defense and organic scouting than an airfield that's unaware. But you could say the exact same for a carrier that's unaware of hostiles and hostilities.
Yeah, but a carrier that's unaware of hostilities is crewed by idiots. A carrier should always have cap up. A carrier should always have aircraft doing scouting missions. Always.
Yeah, an airfield can do the same.
Yeah, but the difference is, no, airfields don't always have scout aircraft doing things. Airfields have scout aircraft doing things when missions demand it. It's different. It's entirely different.
Yeah, but if the mission is provide scouting for a unit over X time, then that unit will get scouting over X time.
Airfields don't provide...
Because...
Yeah, but no, aircraft
But
usually
you can add that to the mission profile.
It doesn't work the same way, Fox, so that's not how airfields are
my
managed.
point is, you can add it to the mission profile.
Foxo, airfields are under the command of air forces most of the time. You have to go through different channels. It doesn't really offer the same...
And in a competent military, lessons exist.
Foxo,
where you can get information to the right place quickly.
Oh yeah, it does. Tell me when that happens in actual military operations. All the time.
Well,
it doesn't.
Let's see. The Gulf War, Gulf War 2.
Yeah, but that's... Yeah, but
because I remember coordinated both carrier and land-based aircrafts, Gulf Wars, Vietnam War, arguably the Falklands War, the US interventions in South America.
You're quoting post-war examples
US punitive wars,
which are again not proving your point.
I'm not talking about the post-war not talking about the post-war punitives.
Yeah, Foxo, I'm unconvinced. You've not given me any examples that actually prove your point.
That's because you don't want to see them.
No, you're not. Like, there's a difference between World War II era command and control and interdepartmental cooperation during wartime, especially in the Axis navies. Heck, even in the Allied navies, you're looking at For example, to prove my point, Force Z.
Yeah,
The
that
RN
was
and
an
the
example of how you don't have it.
Exactly.
And then you look at the counterpoint. You look at it, the fact that the fleet was out of position. There was very poor radio communications equipment in the Far East, even by World War II standards, due to the incomplete modernization of Singapore. You have aircraft that have very short-range radios because they're early to mid 1913 models. Because command and control changes massively throughout World War II, and it becomes possible as aircraft get fucking radios.
Foxo, the point isn't about actually communicating with the aircraft. The point is that there was a fundamental lack of communication and intelligence sharing between the two branches during the operations of Force Z. There was intelligence failures,
yes.
But my point is that it would have been infinitely better if a carrier had been with Force Z. You wouldn't have had those problems. No capital ships would have been lost, basically because we know for a fact that Renown was dodging, Prince of Wales was trying to dodge.
Renown wasn't fucking there, mate.
Sorry, Repulse, sorry. But either way, the point still stands in that if you break up the strike, both ships are going to have enough leeway to actually dodge the weapons being unleashed against them. You're not going to see...
Counterpoint. A land-based aircraft could have done that if it had proper working communications equipment.
That wasn't the problem, Foxo. That wasn't the problem at all.
Yeah, well, yes, it was because of A, they sorted late because poor communications, and they sorted to the wrong location.
They didn't even sort
poor communication.
They didn't even
Part
sort
of them did. Because there's records of them finding the sinking wrecks of their ships they're supposed to be providing air cover to.
No, they weren't supposed to be providing air cover to. That's not the case at all. Me and Dr. Clark have talked about this. They were out of range. They weren't even summoned. Because the RAF, the RN didn't even send out a request for help because they were, as far as they were out of range and there was no air cover available. There was no request for aid sent. Because as far as the RN was concerned, they'd been... No, there wasn't! We've been through this!
A carrier wouldn't have fucking helped!
Yes, it would have done!
That's my point!
It would have done. It would have broken up the strikes.
No, right.
No, because... right. We
see
the failure of carriers to break up consecutive strikes with Force H and the run to Malta.
That's entirely different.
Illustrious
That's entirely
takes a
different.
fucking pound.
That's entirely different.
That
is entirely different.
Several air wings doing consistent attacks against a force with a carrier.
With fighter escorts on all of those attacks. The bombers attacking Force Z did not have any fighter escorts.
Counterpoint, most of the fighter support after the first three waves was from Malta.
You say that Stelea actually, I'm sorry, but the convoy is a heavily armed convoy.
Yeah, it's
got multiple carriers and I'm pretty sure a battleship or two, if I remember correctly.
It's got two battleships, an armoured carrier, it also has Furies before she pulls off, it's got a full cruiser and destroyer screen.
But again, my point still stands.
And an air screen.
We also have another example of this later with Operation Catapult, how badly it went wrong. On the other hand, I am still going to say I'm going to semi-side with Fleet because a carrier would help. It wouldn't be perfect, but it's better than nothing.
But it's not though. You just lose another capital ship.
Not necessarily, because you might be able to actually cause. Well, you've got an extra. Right, if you're sending a carrier, you're probably going to send at least one or two extra ships with it as well. You're not just... Unless the Royal Navy's really desperate. Also, you've now got another ship's worth of AA, which that's still something, plus a wing or two of fighters. While it might not be perfect, you will at least be slowing down potential rates of enemy attacks. Also, Renown dodge... what's it called? Not Renown. Repulse dodges how many torpedoes? It's
a lot.
6 or something?
This thing, you only...
She drops over 6 attack waves.
Yeah, all
But
the
that is renown. That's
Yes.
Repulse.
yeah,
But
And
what I'm
that's
saying is,
Repulse's captain being a fucking legend.
yes.
now
okay.
imagine if he's
They
still
push
doing,
that
if he
sh-
still does this, yet the enemy now can't drop as many torpedoes.
And of course,
But yeah,
you've also
but then
got.
the enemy doesn't target the ship they can't hit.
That's
They
not
target
what- that's-
a ship that's
not-
very
that's-
long,
That's
doesn't
not how.
turn particularly
That's
well.
not how airstrikes work. That's not
Uh,
how
Yes, it
airstrikes
does.
work.
Yes, it
no,
does.
it isn't.
Yes,
kind
it
of
does. No, we
If you-
see that in the American carrier strikes.
If a target does
where
keep
it-
Those
moving,
aren't
if you
American
would-
aircraft, for God's sake, woman.
But the point is, air wings and strike aircraft, we know this from the British and the US accounts, is the fact that strike aircraft go after ships that aren't maneuvering. A carrier cannot maneuver particularly well due to their size compared to a battle cruiser.
Yes, but this.
And the point is, the carrier wouldn't have helped because
Right.
these were very good aircraft for their time that were attacking. They were fast. they were highly trained squadrons.
Okay, I'll give you the
And
highly trained,
they knew-
but the G3Ms, the G3Ms.
I'm sorry, Fleet. They're not fucking
Oh.
biplanes.
Oh God,
got a
Foxo,
point
come
there.
back to me when
They're
you've got
not
a practical
fucking
point to make.
biplanes. They're not sea gladiators.
Oh,
Because the carrier
Also-
that's in the Far East
Ugh.
is Hermes, and she's carrying motherfucking sea gladiators
oh.
before she gets sunk.
Also, to be
Do
fair,
you-
you are seeming to say make it sound like the G3M is completely useless.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is
It's faster
I'm
than
not-
a gladiator.
It's more the
It can
fact that
outrun a gladiator. That's all that
why are
matters.
you assuming?
yeah.
Why are you assuming that it was? Okay,
Because the carrier in the Far East is Hermes.
and why would
Now-
they?
No, the carrier they
even-
wanted to send, and it was Hermes.
They wanted to have another carrier, but Hermes was what they would have had to send.
But yeah, if you look at it practically, it's Hermes because the Fleet Air Arm could have wanted Seafires. They're not getting Seafires, are they?
I feel like you love it's not just a lot of your points are just
Right.
whataboutisms. Basically, they're not really
Really
anything
Fleet,
that really.
before you say
But
that,
they're
you do
not.
the same. But
You do the
anyway,
exact same,
right.
but they're not.
So, since I've been mostly the neutral party here, I'm going to say A and but. You both are raising good points. I do think Foxer is at least correct in some regard. A carrier might not help. It all comes down to, does the carrier get lucky and manage to defeat enough of the strikes without having all its planes attack?
It doesn't even have to defeat the strikes.
G3Ms do,
It
but
doesn't
even breaking it right, even breaking it up though, will help. But it depends just how committed they are to taking it. And if they do target the carrier, which they probably will, to be fair, after the first wings coming back and they report there is a carrier present, that will likely be the Japanese first target.
True, but I will point out that most of once the air wings have done their strikes, it's important to remember that Japanese scrambled basically everything they had in the region with range that was chained for the anti-shipping role. So once
Are they able to make 9 strikes?
yeah, but once those 9 strikes are done, that's it. Force Z goes home, and I think it's highly likely that Force Z survives to limp away, even if shown such
doesn't-
damage.
It
Force
doesn't though,
Z
because
might,
you don't
but-
get rid
Force
of.
Z might, but
For-
Force Z
no,
will be
no, no.
severely depleted.
I'll rephrase that. Repulse might escape.
No, you're overestimating the value of Japanese air power here, and you're overstating.
But you're not. It's
you're
the
understating.
early war.
It's
You're
not.
overestimating the
You're also
Fleet Air Arm
I'm
overstating
not.
that you are
You
to
are.
a degree here.
because they're gladiators. And with the best will in the world, the gladiators. We see them in the early
If they're in the
Mediterranean
right-
War
if they're
against
in the right
land-based
position, they might
aircraft.
be able
The
to
We
help.
see them against Ju-88.
The gladiators
we
are
see
only
them
one.
against Ju-87.
The aircraft are only one
see how
part of
shit
this
they are.
equation. The aircraft are only one
But
part of
the
this equation.
aircraft are the thing
They are
that
kind,
matter.
right. Admittedly, she's got a point here, Fleetware. The aircraft
She
are
does.
a very
she-
important aspect.
She does, but she doesn't.
Because if your anti-aircraft guns are opening upon an aircraft, and that aircraft is too close.
Also, technically speaking, there is then
incorrect.
the problem of unless right, Fleet. Aim always says that makes sense, but also Fleet. So the problem is the gladiators can't keep up with the G3Ms really.
They don't.
So
have
you
to.
can't really send them. So, right, okay, continuing on then. If they don't have to, you're probably keeping them around your fleet, right?
You're basically looking to pounce on aircraft that are doing their attack runs. You're not looking to
Right,
do
which means the AA guns
It's a
fire.
gladiator. An aircraft with a dive speed of 240 kph.
Okay. What's your point?
So, also, here's
I'm
another problem.
pretty sure the
A,
G6M is
It's
near faster than that in level flight.
but also,
Not
another
when
point
it's
here, though, Fleet, is-
not when it's on its torpedo run. It's not. It's had to slow up.
yes, but also, Fleet, there's another big problem you're missing here.
No. At that point, you're not breaking up the strike because they're already dropping the fucking torpedo.
No, they're not.
too late.
You have to parallel a long way on the torpedo. You don't just dive in, drop a torpedo, and
Let
pull
the
away.
audience know I'm at least trying to end this.
Yeah,
But-
but it's a case of. But you also take time to dive down and engage an aircraft.
Admittedly, again, I think you are missing one thing also here, Fleet. If you have allied aircraft in the area and they're trying to do something, you will also now have to be far more careful with your AA firepower. Which means while the AA might historically might not have done much, you've now significantly dropped that potential AA firepower.
You'd think so, but that's not how AA control worked.
You will,
But it
yeah,
is.
but you will
It
be
is.
risking your own planes, and that
It was a risk that the
Why- it might be
USN
something they
took
don't shoot.
in numerous occasions during the Pacific War because it was
right.
worth the
It's a risk
risk.
the USN took. but
Right,
once again,
Fleet.
Fleet,
But
quote
we
your own
have a
word.
doctrinal example of the RAF not doing that, and it's
I will
called
also bring
operational
up a point.
excess. Where
I
the
will bring up a point
RAF
of what Fleet just
when-
said earlier. People remember? This isn't the USN.
Yes, it's the Royal Navy, and the Royal Navy has precedence for halting anti-aircraft fire when friendly aircraft are within the anti-aircraft fire envelope. Just look at
Anyway.
the FOMARs in excess, because we know how the Royal Navy deals with this shit when the carriers are under attack in the early war. We know.
Anyway,
41's not
either
early
move
war,
on or
but
I start
anyway.
talking about 40k or Star
41 is
Wars.
early war.
No, it
41
isn't.
is early
41
war.
is mid.
It
Eh.
is.
41 is mid-war.
I would say it's late early.
It's mid-war. 40.
Like-
early war's
Hold on,
1939.
42,
42's mid.
42, 43 is mid-war.
No,
Yeah, and
For-
And then
44,
45 is
45
late war.
no, it's 1939-40 is early war. 41, 42, 43 is mid, and 44, 45 is late.
It's 39, 40, and 41 are all early war.
No, they're
And
not.
do you know why it's all early war?
They are.
Because it's defined by the phase of Nazi success, Nazi stagnancy, Nazi failure.
Also, a lot of media does point out 41 as being early still, and as much as the media normally can be criticised, I would agree that overall 41 is still early war. That's why I said 41 is late early war. It is the end of the beginning.
And if you want to add, just to hammer it home, in his book
I mean, there's nothing you can
about
say.
the tribals,
there's nothing-
in the tribals, Dr. Andrew Clark also says 1941 is early war.
I'll have to disagree with Dr. Clark then myself, but I'm allowed to, and I would also point out
Yeah.
that
I point out I have a source for it. You don't.
But anyway,
That's
as
just a
said, since
matter
I've
of
been
opinion.
trying to end this for a while now, and also, before you say anything about opinions, Fleet, you've often disregarded others, so let's just end this one here before we keep going in circles. Actually, all right,
I know-
Moe's actually,
I know-
okay,
I know
since
how
Moe's now
far-
asked it, since there is now a new question, even if it connects to the old, Fleet, Moe is asking, what is your reasoning for thinking why 41 is mid-war?
41, you basically, for me, the mid-war starts when
We'll get there
Barbarossa.
shortly. Gunner
Simple. 41 for me is the reason. Well, several reasons it turns into mid-war. You're well past the fall of France. Operation Barbarossa starts, and the US enters the war. That to me makes it the mid-war. Once the Soviets and the US.
No, they
are
don't.
In, the US are in. That's mid-war.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
That's the beginning of the mid-war period.
ABDA Con was doomed from the start due to the
Right.
fact it was plagued by infighting.
Calling
also
the
it was
attack on Pearl
outdated.
Harbor calling the US being brought in, making it mid-war is
I like how you completely ignore the fact that I said the Soviets, but you know,
Yeah,
hey ho,
right.
selective picking.
well, yeah.
there we
and
go.
the reason why I'm picking the US fleet is because one particular reason. The US, it happens in bloody December.
I didn't just
You
say
chose to
I
pick-
didn't just say
I
the
know.
US, did I? I said the Soviets and the US. You can't just cherry pick one part of my point and then use
Operation
it to make
Barbarossa
yours.
started in June.
Yeah, middle of the year.
Yeah.
Opera-
And counterpoint,
still
counterpoint.
halfway through the year instead of the very end of the year.
And counterpoint,
That's the point
Barbarossa in 1941 is a success for the Germans. It doesn't
And-
become a failure and
and
stagnate until
Who
42.
cares about whether something's
And
a
it's-
success or
And
failure?
it's the stagnation.
I
It's
don't-
the stagnation
No, it
and,
isn't,
and
and
the
that's a-
Allies'
that's a
ability
stupid-
to stop
That's a,
the advance of the
Ugh.
Axis in 42.
That's a very
that makes
stupid way to
42
do
the
it.
mid-war.
that's a very stupid way
But-
to measure it.
Okay, why? Because it makes right. Let me just explain it. Because the US gets its shit kicked in 41. The British up until 39 and 41 get their shit kicked in. The French, we don't talk about the French. The Soviets, they get their shit kicked in. And the Italians, they're punching. The Italians being the Italians, and they've got their shit together, kind of. And the early war, I would define as, it's when the Nazis are doing well. It's the Valenzkrieg phase of the war, where the Nazis are throwing punches and then knocking people out. I will agree with you. There's an argument that ends in late 1941. But for the majority of 1941, Barbarossa hasn't happened, the Americans aren't in the war, and the UK is fucking losing. They're barely winning the Battle of Britain. The less said about Allied bombing campaigns, the better.
The Battle of
I would
Britain's over.
argue
The
that
Battle
it's
of Britain's,
not-
The Battle of
Yeah.
Britain ends by early 41.
But that's my point.
Well,
Right,
Yeah.
let me explain. The Battle of Britain is over. That does not mean the air campaign fought over Britain is over.
No, I know
'Cause
that.
that doesn't
I-
functionally end until late 1942.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. Like, I know.
Yeah, but can I continue?
Go on.
And it's how I define it, how I find a lot of historians define it is they define the early war by Axis success. They define the mid-war by the prevention of that success, where the Allies are hitting back. It's how to put it. It's the Allies start actually seeing victories. You start to see the stalemate. Like 1940 to 1943, the Soviets get their shit together, and
Although to be fair,
yeah,
the,
blood
the-
stop the Nazis advancing.
the Soviets. I mean,
That
okay,
is the mid-war.
fair point. The Soviets. I mean, to be fair, I will just point out the Soviets getting their shit together is only possible because the Allies pumped so much equipment and resources into them
Yeah, no one's
to enable them to
no
do
one's
that.
denying
but,
this.
Fleet, that's a part of the point that that's a part of things that prove my point. It's the Allies starting Lend-Lease is where the early war becomes the mid-war. It's when the Allies as a whole get their shit together. It's where the American Navy starts getting
Oh no!
its shit together.
Oh no! Like no! All the points about getting this shit together, you're entirely right. But I just don't. The point here isn't that you can't use either method. The point is that I fundamentally disagree with the way you're measuring it. It's not that you can't use it as such. It's just that personally, I don't view it as a good judge of the periods of the war. It's technically a matter of
Yeah,
opinion
right,
rather
right.
than.
It's
This
a
has
link
been
that
brought
back to
up.
my prior point is
Right, go on.
compare the RAF Royal Fleet Air Arms Command and Control from 1941 and 1942. You will see large-scale reforms that define either era.
I have given
You will
that
see the
viable.
renovation and the replacement. It's stuff like the introduction of what's it called? The
Yeah,
radar
Mullet-
beacons of the aircraft that allows the carrier to track their positions accurately without having to be reported back to the carrier
I mean,
within
I-
a certain range.
I mean,
It's stuff like that for Fleet Command that is what is sort of how you go from the pre and early war version sort of doctrine of carrier control to the mid-war idea of carrier control
Narwhal.
for the
I-
Royal Navy.
Narwhal.
Because
I've-
this is about the Royal Navy.
Yeah, Narwhal, I've literally said that I choose to
Yeah.
judge the early war ending when Barbarossa kicks off. Because at that point, the conflict's escalated from Germany versus the Western Allies to the full-scale Second World War. We've got the Eastern Front, the Italian Front. You've basically got nearly all the players in. You're just waiting for Japan to kick the US's door down.
But what? That's not true because Barbarossa.
Barbarossa was doomed to fail eventually.
There's a reason history has over 200 hours of content that goes over it.
Because Barbarossa can succeed. The Soviets just have to get absolutely no support from the Western Allies. I mean, none.
Yeah.
Like, if the Soviets get no support from the Western Allies, then there's no reorganization of the Soviet Union's forces during the winter of 42, because they haven't received the uniforms, the supplies, the fuel, the materiel, radios, trucks, etc. So when the Germans do their summer offensive in 42, it's going to be even more successful than it was historically. And if the Soviets still aren't getting support in 42, are they going to be able to pull off the counterattack they manage that it creates the encirclement at Stalingrad? Maybe not. And if that's the case, then you might be looking at the possibility of a third major German summer offensive in 43, which may gain even more ground.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's that. It's not Allied support that'll decide it. It's the Nazis win Barbarossa by pulling their head out of their fucking ass. But they're Nazis, they never will. It's doomed to failure because they need either the indifference or the support of the local populations. And they fucking ruin it. Yeah, it's a case of if the Nazis do what they need to fix the logistics of the Eastern Front, at that point you don't have Nazis because it's gone against the ideology of Nazism.
Then you don't even have to change the Nazis at all. The Russian army and the Russian people are so incompetent that it's basically it's without the support from the Allies they can't win. They physically cannot defeat the Reich or its allies on the Eastern Front without Lend-Lease. It's physically
I don't think
impossible.
they can because the German army defeats itself.
No, it doesn't.
It defeats itself because it's all head no tail. It's got a horrible fucking hellscape that is their truck fleet. With Jesus Christ, we've just looted Europe for trucks. There's no standardization, no commonality. There is no M3 equivalent. It's also you have the poor infrastructure of the Soviet Union, meaning that they're reliant on rail, and rail is a very easy target for a population you've pissed off. And a lot's made. Unfortunately, not enough is made of the Ukrainian, the Belarusian, the Baltic, the Polish wars of resistance of fucking Nazi supply.
Oh no, I'm aware of that. But the problem you've got is that the problem that you've got is that the Russian counteroffensives that we see, heck, even the Russian defensive actions in 1942 are only made possible. Bear in mind, we're not changing what the Nazis have got available on the Russian front. We don't need to. By removing Lend-Lease, you have gutted the Russian army.
But you haven't gutted the bits that effectively stop the Wehrmacht, though.
I have, in a major way.
Because a major issue, which is around the whole myth of the initial run to Moscow, is the fact the Panzer divisions had plunged that far into the Soviet Union. They had essentially Soviet divisions that had retreated had reformed between them and the front line. The German front line had gotten that thin that there was entire Soviet divisions behind the front line.
I know that, but that doesn't change the fact that situation was resolved. That situation.
Yes, it was resolved by pauses.
Okay.
And if you go further, if you try and push the Soviets further back, that just gets worse, because that does not solve the German fundamental problem of they don't have enough divisions.
The Germans themselves don't, but the Germans plus their Eastern allies do.
But they don't know that's the issue. Like, okay, yes, partly it's done with the assistance of Lend-Lease aircraft, but stuff like Operation Saturn, Operation Little Saturn, Operation Neptune, where the Soviets effectively, essentially, go, oh, the Germans are pushing in the south, we're just going to push in the north, near the Baltics, in what was nowadays Belarusia, and they go, oh, in the entirety of Belarusia there's 4 divisions, and then just in 43 overrun a good portion of Belarusia before the Germans can stop them.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the Russian army that we know, with a good logistics chain, ability to industrially support itself, and all of the other minutiae that Lend-Lease provided. The Russian army is going to keep getting weaker and weaker and weaker without Lend-Lease. There's going to be no re-energization, no recapitalization of the force. You're going to see a Red Army that gets decreasingly weaker, whereas the Germans are going to have some ability to recapitalize and re-strengthen themselves. Whereas the Russian
do you want to
army
know
is
where a
not.
lot of that strength comes from? The looting and exploitation of northern Italy in 1944 and late 43.
What? Why are we in 44 and 43? We haven't even got past 42 yet.
Yeah, but because I was using Operation Neptune to make a point. That even after the mobilizations of 43, the Germans did not have the divisions to hold the front line they'd created.
Yeah. Well, the thing is...
The situation is worse when the Red Army, although less competently led, with inferior supply, has more divisions, and the Germans have less divisions. Pushing further in 41 and 42 doesn't matter.
Well, no, you're not looking at pushing further into Russia. You're looking at actually, if Hitler's actually giving orders, which he is, he's actually in Russia. He makes entirely the correct assessment that taking Moscow is a stupid idea. You want to seize the raw
go for the Caucasus.
Yes, which is again, where Hitler was entirely correct in that assessment. Now, if you've got a weaker Red Army, it is entirely reasonable to assume that by the end of 1942, the Nazis are in control of the Caucasus. And the Baku oil
But
fields
in
are
1942, the Red Army is not what stops the Nazis. It's their supply lines. They cannot get men, food, and ammo to the front in the Caucasus, which is why they stop. And the Red Army can take more losses. The Red Army cannot be in as good a position. But the Red Army being weaker isn't magically going to build roads, build railways, convert the gauge of railways, just because the Red Army is weaker. Because the Germans are stopped by their supply lines.
Well, I mean,
Because
if the Red Army,
let's not listen to logistics officers. What do they know?
if the Red Army is weaker, then there's a chance that the Germans could perhaps spare the manpower to do a limited amount of upgrading of the logistics network. But although that is a bit of a stretch, but it's still a possibility.
Because remember, you're not rebuilding the logistics train of the Soviet Union at that point.
No,
You're doing all of Eastern Europe.
Well, at that point, you may as well actually. You're probably looking at the Germans investing in a larger fleet of broad gauge locomotives, if they've got the time. Like, the thing is, if they've got the time and the spare industrial capacity that from not having to worry about half the army disappearing in Stalingrad, then
I will say something. It's interesting you point out the whole Germans transferring to the Russian gauge, the Soviet gauge, because they did. They had. I can't remember the call now, but someone go find them. They had a big set, surprisingly large set of captured Soviet engines that were converted to use German steam engines on essentially Soviet chassis.
Oh yeah,
those are fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, see what you want about Nazis, but they knew how to make their trains.
It's very true.
Yeah, we don't have the train boys here, do we?
Fleet, why isn't it happening? It's kind of hard to... I think, given the terrain of Western Russia, building a single-track railway line to close railway gaps, because that's realistically what the Germans are going to have to try and do, that's not that hard.
It depends.
Yeah, well, it depends on the terrain, obviously. That's...
Because if you try and do it through Ukraine, you run into the same issue the Soviets had. It's this thing called Rasputitsa
Yeah, I know.
that has a habit of washing away railway lines, as
Yeah.
the Russians have learned the hard way this last couple of years.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But, again, like, they're going to make an effort. But even so...
Yeah.
I mean, even then, it'll still be... Well, on the positive side, it will mean that the Russians won't get to the Polish border by the time the Allies are in Berlin. So, that's something.
Yeah, but it's just an interesting fact of the German utilization of the Soviet railway gauge. Incredibly nerdy and obscure, but it's fucking fascinating.
Yeah. With what labour force?
Let's-
The same one they used to build the Atlantic Wall, and all the other shit they built. It's hard to bear in mind that one of the things the Nazis were very good at, that everyone forgets, is moving vast amounts of skilled construction labour around their empire, and managing it in a major way.
And remember, building earthworks doesn't require skilled labour. And the one thing the Nazis proved throughout the entire war was they were horrifically effective with slave labour.
In a hostile territory? Yeah, in a hostile territory.
Yeah,
Yeah, they can
They-
do that.
they literally enslaved Polish, Ukrainian, and Belarusian workers to fix Germany's railroads under the Allied bombing campaign.
And the same people who are fixing railways can also build railways.
Yeah,
It's...
because once you've got the pieces made, building a railway on flat land isn't that hard.
The biggest part of building a railway is bridge construction and earthworks. Always has been.
Yeah, and one of those can be done with unskilled labour.
Heck, even bridge construction, you can actually get away with mostly unskilled labour. Sure, the design of the bridge is going to have to come from an architect, but that's about it.
But yeah, bits of the bridge are going to need to require skilled labour.
But not all of
And
it.
that's stuff like joints. Yeah,
Crane
so
operators,
joints,
etc. Crane operators, things
crane
like
op-
that.
yeah. But it's
that's-
stuff like you don't
that's a
you need to be
minutia.
a skilled labour
Yeah,
and
but that's a...
shovel dirt
Yeah, I mean, heck...
and dig.
I mean, heck, if it's Russia, and the Germans aren't too bothered about sustainment for the Russian population, if they come to a small enough river, just fucking build an embankment across it.
That's what they did.
I know, exactly, this is the thing.
Yeah, it's like people tend to forget how fucking evil the Nazis
Yeah.
were.
I'm sorry,
Like
but
it's
there's-
overblown, but it's easy to construct things when you do not care about the health of the construction worker. Oh no, they fell off the bridge and died as I was making it. Oh well, go round up another one. That's literally what happened,
Yeah.
and the Japanese did the same thing.
Oh, no, they...
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
Oh, no.
They were evil.
Oh, they were evil.
I don't get what's controversial about this.
Yeah, like they were evil, but you will admit that they did throw up structures in an insanely short amount of time. Also, Foxo, I will admit this is a bit of a meme. Fleet and Foxo, when discussing naval history and other bits and bobs, at each other's throats. Fleet and Foxo, when discussing construction programs, best friends.
There's a reason I've been staying quiet.
Have
It'll
you,
be easier to let you two argue it
have you
out.
seen that gif of the electronic gate and the two dogs?
Yes,
When the
that's
gate's
it.
shut.
That's
Okay,
it.
well,
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the one. Oh. 'Cause here's the thing. Like, we get heated, but we never actually go like it's not like it's not. We let
Sometimes.
there's no insults been exchanged. I can't remember any time we've ever insulted each other when we've been discussing. We've gotten heated, but we've never actually.
Yeah.
Because it's professional. It's a professional heated discussion. It's not like there's no. What's the word? Personal views. I think
Personal
it's called.
attacks?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one.
There's no ad hominem. That's it.
Yeah. See,
Trying to be technical.
Internet blood sport.
see,
No. We need to do
the thing
some
is-
blood sport. Get
and
some
the thing is,
custodians
you see,
here.
that's the thing is, that's how you know me and Foxo care, because we actually will passionately argue. We actually have points to stand behind.
Yeah, but it's an
I need to
important
disappear
thing
for a
about
bit, but I'll be
debating.
back later if you're still all going.
Is that debating, it might sound like an argument, but unlike argument, it has rules. You have a premise. There's rules to it because you're fundamentally trying to convince someone, not shout at them.
Yeah, there's a reason why.
And fundamentally, insulting people doesn't make them not like you, and people who don't like you don't want to believe you.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay, I need to really blitz. I hope you don't mind if I quickly blitz through a few questions, Fox. I do mean blitz, just give me a 5-minute
Okay.
blitz gap. Because a lot of these I can blitz through quite quickly. Any chance we'll see you stream Waves of Steel? I've had a look at it, and I probably might do at some point if I can find the money to buy it. Why did the USN move from three-man crew torpedo bombers into only one for A1 Skyreader? Basically because navigation could be done by the pilot. You didn't need a defensive gunner because of the way fighters and other things were moving, and the aircraft was big enough that, well, basically it was a whole combination of factors. But basically the three main ones were pilot could do navigation himself now. The aircraft could carry both bombs and torpedoes, and the pilot could manage their release himself. And again, fighters were getting to the point that a single tail gun wasn't going to do jack shit to them to keep them off your back. Next is how would Fleet modernize Alabama if she was reactivated in Vietnam? Alabama's gone by Vietnam. But anyway, reactivating her, there's not really much you can do. There's no role she really fills. Not even shore bombardment, to be honest with you. She's... Problem is, for shore bombardment, if you want a battleship, get an Iowa. If you... Again, there's no real reason to modernize Alabama for the Vietnam War. Because, again, the Iowas exist and are easier to reactivate. And by that point, I think Alabama's on her way out, actually, by the time of into service as a museum ship by the time of Vietnam. But if you're gonna
said it better.
But if you're gonna reactivate her, you basically just bring her back with a skeleton crew for her engines and guns and use her as a floating gun barge, basically, with a pair of destroyers with her at all times. That's about it. No modernization at all. If you're bringing back Alabama, you're bringing her back for the cheap, basically. You're not crewing her 5-inch guns. You're not crewing her AA mounts. She is literally there to be a 16-inch gun platform, and that is it. Question, thoughts on the XB-19? It was a valuable step in US aviation production, pioneered a lot of the processes that would go into making aircraft like the Convair B-36 and the Boeing B-29. In the novels, His Majesty's Dragons, the Royal Navy... Oh, Brackman, you didn't have to do that. Thank you. In the novel His Majesty's Dragons, the Royal Navy helped build large sailing ships that used to carry dragon squadrons around. How would you design such ships for the Napoleonic Wars? Well, basically, you have a ship that has a forecastle and aft castle like normal, but you have the center masts have no lower sails, and you have basically a very low platform, very low to the water, that you basically keep free of canvas as much as possible. And with raised bulwarks you can put when you're not operating dragons. But that's basically it. So you're looking at a ship that has an armament concentrated in its fore and after castles for self-defense, and then has a center section where you perhaps have a sort of hangar/stable area, perhaps 1 to 2 dragons, and then sort of a launch area where they can take off from. If you controlled... Here we go. Now we're back to the normal questions. I'll let Foxo take the lead on this. If you control the British cruiser procurement in the 30s and into the war era, what would change or order instead of OTL choices? Well, first thing what we need to lay down right now, no 8-inch cruisers, no super cruisers, the RN doesn't need them, and they're pretty much a waste. You can get the...
Counterpoint, you need the 8-inch cruisers.
You don't. You can get the...
You do.
You don't.
You do, for the President's mission.
Well, we've already got them. We've already got them. We've got the counties. We don't need any more.
Assuming we get the counties,
No, he's talking about in the 30s, so by that point the counties are all ordered, including the second batch. So,
at that point, they don't have much tonnage to play with, so historical.
Yeah, you're looking at the historical build-out, you're looking at the towns, crown colonies, which were the ideal cruisers for the job. Good, punchy, 6-inch armed ships, that's what you need.
Because if you can revise the counties, and if we do it from the 1920s, 1930s, it's an argument to be made that you could go with the light cruiser style of hull construction, just armed with 8-inch guns. Like how there was plans for the 8-inch conversion of the towns. And there was proposals for an upscaled Leander-like design, but with 8-inch. But if you're just letting me scrap the 8-inch cruiser, scrap the 8-inch cruiser. Because for the Royal Navy doctrine, the 6-inch cruiser does the job. And a large 6-inch cruiser, that does it better. If you need the 8-inch, because the 8-inch cruiser is also... It's a presence and prestige thing, so you can argue they would want to keep it around. You sort of have to ask yourself.
Right, okay, where were we?
Right. Can the Royal Navy
Yes.
do better than the counties for the present mission? Take into account all the things the Royal Navy needs these ships to do. They need extreme range. They need to be colonial leaders. Oh, fuck it be called.
To answer Foxo's question, no. The RN can't do better than the RN can't do better than the counties, and by that I mean they can physically do better, but you have to bear in mind what you would get for the cost. In order to do meaningfully better than the counties, to make it worthwhile, you're looking at a ship that's at least 15 to 18,000 tons, armed with 9 8-inch guns, and, I don't know, a smattering of 5.25-inch mounts, and at that point, you're looking at a ship that's going to cost 80% as much as 2 Crown Colonies, or 2 World War II towns. And at that point, the numbers don't make sense. You've already got the counties. They're good enough. You need to bulk up RN-like cruiser numbers. It's becoming quite apparent to the RN that the Arethuses aren't going to be enough. The Arethusans and Leanders are not big enough. They're not powerful enough. So... Can the RN do better than the counties for the President's mission? Yeah, absolutely. Can they afford to, given it's the 30s and you're looking at the run-up to the Second World War? No, they can't.
I know, back I just noticed. Narwhal, an 8-inch Leander's not a York. Because they are two completely different ship designs. And layouts.
Are you at least cancelling the Yorks? No, the steel's already been cut. Steel's already been cut. May as well finish them.
And none of that is look at why York exists. You've done nothing that changes her reason to exist. Therefore, she'll exist.
Your typical gunnery officer asks question. Basically, Foxo, not sure if you heard it, but my answer was basically. The RN can do better than the counties, but they can't afford to. And by that I don't mean afford in terms of raw money. They have the money. It's just that they have other things to do with their cruiser yards right now, or the yards that can build cruisers. A meaningful ship that gives you enough extra capability than a county to be worth it. You're looking at a ship in the 15 to 18,000 ton range, armored against 8-inch shell fire, carrying 9 18-inch guns. And at that point, a ship of that size costs 80% as much as 2 towns, or 2 crown colonies. At that point, the
If
number...
you're abiding by the treaties, you can't build it.
but again, point still stands. At that point, my point's even more close to the numbers. You're better off building, like, what have you got if you don't build the towns and the crown colonies for light cruisers, Leanders and Arathusas? You've not got the big punchy 6-inch cruisers that you need in the Second World War environment.
I'd argue the towns aren't like cruisers, though.
They have to. There's a whole, the whole thing about 6-inch, 8-inch guns, etc., is another matter entirely. But as far as the layman, as far as the layman is concerned, they're light cruisers. So I'm just going to stick with that, and we can have a debate about that when we have a discussion on actual cruisers at some point in the future.
I mean, when the press is referring to them as just cruisers, compared to light cruisers, like the crown colonies referred to as.
I know.
And the documents are referring to them as cruisers. They're cruisers, not light cruisers.
I know, but Foxo, as far as the layperson is concerned, 6-inch gun equals light cruiser, so I'm sticking with that because that's what the layperson will know.
I would call the average press officer a layman person, because they're all fucking morons.
Yeah, but...
You can't get Robin STEM.
Yeah, but anyway, the point still stands. Question: what if the Japanese won the Battle of Khalkhin Gol? Could they conduct a limited invasion of Russia and the Nazis support them from the west? The Japanese physically can't win the Battle of Khalkhin Gol. The Japanese deploy a small number of a very small commitment. The Russians respond with what is essentially a sledgehammer blow to the chin. The sheer disparity in force composition on both sides is ridiculous.
But even if the Soviets don't send several full divisions to fight a couple of brigades, that is very different. It's the case of the Japanese don't even have full control of Manchuria yet. So, you want them to invade Siberia? Yeah. Like, the Japanese didn't go north for a reason, and it's, to a degree, not the Soviets. I don't know how many times this has to be said. There is no roads in Siberia. Just one major railroad in Siberia. Technically two.
The only way the Japanese invade Eastern Russia is if they roll up the Trans-Siberian. That is it. You roll up the Trans-Siberian, and you constantly build supply dumps to support yourself as you go up it.
There's two ways to invade Siberia. The south, through Central Asia. At that point, Japan has to get to Central Asia, or the Trans-Siberian.
Oh!
Because you do have those railways through the Gobi at this point, don't you?
Oh god, no.
Like,
No, those aren't even close to being there.
or they come in the Chinese Civil War.
No, they come after that. Way after. You don't start seeing railways through the Gobi Desert until the 50s and 60s. And that's the early preliminaries to building them. Because it's such a shitty environment to build in.
So, because I thought they had one that went through Ulaanbaatar down to Yinchuan, where the Soviets shipped in a shit ton of supplies to the Communist Chinese. But okay, that clarifies it now. Well,
I'm just going to say, if anyone has any questions, could you please ask them in the next half an hour, because Dr. Clark has invited me to co-op on brew ships tonight, because he's having to run today rather than yesterday. So he's asked me if I'd join him, so I will, and that starts at 8, so you've got half an hour before I have to take 15 minutes to detox and get myself ready to take my revenge on Dr. Clark. Now it's my turn to crash the party. Revenge! Revenge! Oh.
But as I remember, wasn't there railways through Mongolia though?
Some. But I'm not that familiar on Mongolian railways, to be honest with you. Arnat says, do you possibly think you can out-troll Dr. Clark? Oh, yes.
Yes, but it involves use of a pipe bomb.
No, I don't even have to go that far.
Hmm.
Could the current navies do anything against the fleet of fog, considering that the current navies in Arpeggio of Blue Steel don't do anything against the fleet of fog? No. Because the fleet of
Yes.
fog fight the current navies of that timeline, and they get their teeth kicked in with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Because the fleet of
But-
fog uses alien bullshit technology, TM.
Yeah.
Which humanity can't
But
fucking counter.
we also see them get destroyed by nuclear weapons.
But that's not the Navy at that point. Again, it's
The US Navy in the manga successfully nukes fleet of fog warships. It's just it's done far too late.
And I think at that point it's basically a please fuck off and stop advancing, or we'll do it again.
Yeah. But nuclear submarines are still hanging around firing nuclear torpedoes at things. Because you could go boom. Look, my opinion on the Mongolian Navy is that it's an anti-piracy force, and it's an anti-illegal fishing force, and a bunch of old gunboats with 3-inch guns and AK and 50 cals is good enough to deal with a fisherman or an illegal fishing boat.
Yep. If you had 70,000 tons worth of capital ship tonnage during the 20s and 30s as the Dutch. Now this is interesting. I'm not limited by treaty, because I'm the Dutch Navy. I have no limits on what I can build by treaty. However, I want at least 3 ships out of it. So, we're looking at 23... Hang on. 20 is 60. 23. Yeah, 23,000 tons per ship. Because that takes me to 69,000 tons. Which means I've only got 1,000 tons spare, which is pretty much bang on the nose. So, we need to look at what are our commitments as the Dutch. We've got home waters, and we've got the most important bit, which is the Dutch East Indies. What are our threat profiles? So in the Dutch East Indies, we're looking at the IJN. In home waters, we're looking at everything from the French, through the Germans, through the British, etc. Now, any capital ship... one moment, I'm just going to very quickly. AMC Woods, you can't build the Forestals in World War II. The tech doesn't exist. And the command and control doesn't exist. The aircraft handling doesn't exist. They're too much ship, basically.
If you tried to get Brookston Yards to build you a hull that size, they would laugh, shake your hand, and then you'd get a visit from the local Irish mafia and get shot in the back of the head. Because you're setting their boys up for a fall because they physically can't make it. Ship construction tech doesn't stop developing.
But anyway, back to the Dutch. So, we've got 22,000 tons per ship. So obviously, we're going to build some battle cruisers. Building battleships of that tonnage will not have the correct coefficient of... They will not be able to carry enough firepower, enough armor to be effective on 22,000 tons. So, we're looking at some form of battle cruiser. Now, personally, we need to think about long term here. So, let's get one thing straight. We're looking at a renowned style layout. Foxer's quite correct. We're probably looking at 6 guns, probably in the 11 to 13 inch range. Look, we're looking.
I've got 15.
No, because there's a reason.
They're not going to make capital ships.
No.
They can't fundamentally scare off other capital ships.
No, this is the thing. You're not really looking to. You're basically looking for ships that can dogpile a lone Congo, but have to run from basically everything else. So there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason why. So.
And you need 14s and 15s to deal with the Congo.
No, you don't. You don't. You fundamentally don't. You're looking at.
Let me explain it, then I'll torpedo it for you.
You're basically you're basically looking, for my view, you're looking at a ship that's armoured against 15-inch shellfire, but only carries 6 12-inch guns, probably from Bofors. Probably see if we can get Bofors to create a 12-inch version of those very nasty 11-inch guns they worked up to regun the ferries, but never got used. Those really nasty high-velocity 12-inch guns. If I can get 6 of them, I can carry enough armour to resist the Congos, but still have the guns to go right through their paper-thin World War I era armour belt. And then you're looking at speed of around 33 knots. So I've got enough of a speed margin to chase down most extant cruisers in the world at the time. And easily enough of a margin to run away from anything that's not... I think anything, because I don't think there's a capital ship that will be able to catch me if I'm doing 33 knots. Flat out.
There is. It's called Hood, Renown, and Repulse.
Hood, Renown, and Repulse can't break 33 knots.
They can.
They can't.
They can.
Even when the engines are new, 32 on a good day with the following wind.
It's 32 flank under peacetime conditions.
Yes, but
Like,
obviously...
Renown in World War II is recorded going faster than 33 knots
Okay, so let's assume
under
that...
wartime conditions.
Yes, okay, fair enough. But again, in that case then, so can my ships. Because
Yeah.
the same principles apply. Anyway, the same principles apply. If we assume a maximum peacetime speed of 33 knots, which is the peacetime safe conditions, because that's what it'll be measured for, then the wartime emergency, as in flank when we're giving it the beans and risking tearing the engines off the mountings, will be faster than that. As you've just said. I'm going off peacetime speed regimens here, because that's what's measured.
But it's just an interesting little fact that
No, it is.
the
yeah.
Germans and the Japanese and the Americans did their flank speeds under wartime conditions,
Fair enough.
which is why the Royal Navy ships are comparatively slower.
Fair enough. I don't know what the Netherlands did. I'd have to ask Guy, and he's not here. Guy would know what their test speeds were done under. But anyway,
Well,
let's assume peacetime speeds, just so that we've just so we've got the baseline here. If we're doing it in the 30s, so actually, Foxo, do you reckon it might be worth going for 8? 2 triples and a twin. 8 12s.
Well,
Because that way you
thing
have
is-
because that way you've got you're saving weight by having the triples on the deck and the twins super firing.
the issue with that is you're complicating the ship's maintenance cycle.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, if you're building with larger caliber guns, that would work.
The thing,
'Cause it's notable saving weight.
yeah, the thing,
For small ships, it's not.
yeah, the thing is, Prime Narwhal. The reason why you don't want to go with an all-forward main armament is because these ships will likely have to run from things. So you're gonna want some form of sting in the tail.
And can I just expand on that?
Yeah,
You don't really get the effects of the all-forward armament being very hydrodynamically good until you get above around 38,000 tons.
and we ain't there, Chief.
So if you need that length with the all-forward armament to get the bonuses. Otherwise, you get the Dunkirk situation, where they get all the negatives and none of the positives.
Actually, let me just check something. How much did the Alaskas actually weigh? Let's have a look. 29,000 standard. So yeah, basically, I'm pretty much bang on where I want to be. So if I cut, bearing in mind they're going to be newer ships, if I cut 3 guns out of the design, and we aim for about 31 knots, shave 2 knots of speed off because that'll save a ton of weight. because I'm gonna have to be realistic here, then I can probably just about squeeze in the ships, especially if you consider they're not gonna have the same level of air firepower the Alaskas do. You're looking at, seeing as how these ships are probably going to be built overseas, you're looking at probably...
I can't see them being able to build overseas. The Dutch have a massive shipbuilding industry at this point.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But yeah, if it's the Dutch, that makes it even easier. You're going to be looking at those Dutch dual-purpose 4-inch mounts being used.
Yeah.
Which, along the sides, which to be fair, is going to give us a fairly decent mixed dual-purpose battery. You're looking at probably 5 twin mounts. 5 twin mounts per side. And of course, let's not forget the Dutch were really early adopters of the Bofors. You see it on De Ruyter.
Yeah, because you have the Dutch subsidiaries of Bofors
Yep.
working in the Netherlands. What I'm thinking is that they go for just the Bofors 100 mils
Yeah, that'll probably work.
that the Swedes love.
Yeah, that'll probably work
And
as well.
that-
And at that
The only thing I disagree with... Go on.
And at that point, you've basically got a ship that's got six very nice high-velocity 12-inch guns, 2 forward, 1 aft, in twins. You've got either 8 or 5. Sorry, you've got either 8 or 10 4-inch 100mm mounts in twin dual-purpose mounts. Probably open shielded, not full turrets, but even still, that's still a decent, for the period, dual-purpose battery. And then you've probably got no light AA at all, and 40mm as your rapid-fire AA mount.
No, they're still going to have Oerlikons.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, I'll give that to Foxo. And...
Also, the Dutch get early production of the Oerlikons.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, and in that case, then, you've just created a massive quandary for the IJN. Because if... Let's assume you've got 1 ship in home waters, 1 ship in the Dutch East Indies, and 1 ship in reserve, basically. The Japanese always have to consider there's going to be one of those ships in the Dutch East Indies at any one time.
Right, can I just have one issue I've got with these ships
Go on.
before you start? The issue I can only see that the two revisions I'd make to this is make it about 35,000 tons
I can't.
because we've got 70k tons.
No,
maximum.
no, can't do it. That only gives us 2 ships. That's not good enough.
Yeah, but that is good enough.
No,
because
you
here's
need
my
3.
idea.
You need
No,
3.
right, let me explain. Let me explain. Because the threat profile for the Dutch is realistically the Germans and the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
The British aren't a threat because they're the guarantees of Dutch neutrality.
Uh-huh.
And the British have all the treaties which say they'll defend the Netherlands if the Netherlands is attacked.
Uh-huh.
Which is what they had with Belgium. So the Netherlands aren't an issue. The Americans, they're not really an issue because they have about as much interest in Europe at this point, or the Dutch colonies, as they have about a lot of things, which is not a lot. So their main issue is Japan and Germany. The threat from Germany is the land border. And any threat attack from Germany gets the Royal Navy involved, and the Royal Navy can clap the surface elements of the Kriegsmarine.
Mm-hmm.
So their threat profile is Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue is, I don't see 12-inch guns being enough of a deterrence. Because
They can
12-inch guns, they're going to struggle against the Congos.
not really.
And they're not going to be able to put up a fight if the Japanese decide, yes, we're just going to send something with 16-inch guns down.
Well, they're not supposed to.
And the Japanese can deploy a fleet in bigger numbers. So my idea is you build 2 of them.
No, you can't.
And-
No, we need 3.
and-
We need 3. We need 3 ships.
No, hear me out. Because if you build 2, you can put them with 15-inch guns on. The Dutch have already looked in the 20s at buying the 15-inch 45 Mark 1 from Vickers.
Mm-hmm. Foxo, you've not given me a.
Yeah, that's because you haven't let me finish explaining.
Okay.
And these guns They are the equivalent to the modern 15-inch gun. The modern 15-inch gun can, if you armor against 15-inch guns, it means that it's an overmatch for a Congo. It's no longer the Congo's fight to lose when engaging one. It's these battle cruisers' fight to lose. Because they've got bigger guns and they're armored. Because what I see happening to them if you arm with 11 and 12-inch guns is what happened to Scharnhorst and Gneisenau when they came against Renown. Renown was able to dictate the range, and there being two ships didn't matter because Renown.
Well, that engagement,
Scharnhorst and Gneisenau.
that engagement
Let me finish.
No, I can't let
Because
you use.
even against the battle cruiser,
No, I can't let you.
Renown. Right? No.
I can't let you. No, I can't let you finish. I can't let you finish on that point because Lofferton doesn't count.
Yes, I'm not trying to finish on that point. I'm using it to get because you've got a ship that's similar to these in the Scharnhorst.
Yeah.
And you have an approximate stand-in for a modernized Congo.
Yes, but that's Lofferton.
But my point is,
Lofferton was a battle in rough seas with very different circumstances.
I'm right. I explained this point. Let me re-explain it. The threat analysis indicates that because of her 15-inch guns, Renown had the range advantage. Because she had the range advantage, she had the initiative advantage. He was able to dictate the engagement. And it was the 11-inch gun capital ships got into an issue, had the issues in their threat assessments of Renown going, we have to charge her to get into effective range, while she is already in effective range of us. That's the issue I see with them. They're already fighting a defensive engagement.
The problem,
and to use their smaller guns effectively, they have to close the distance.
That's not the.
But the Japanese have the forces to effectively screen the Congos. The Dutch don't.
That's.
And so it's kind of like. So by how I see it is that you would need the standoff of the 15-inch guns.
That's not how battleship guns work in the Second World War. This issue of big guns outranging small guns no longer matters in the Second World War because of increased elevation.
Yeah, but increased elevation. But it's still, the smaller guns had a lower hit probability than the larger guns. Because of more energy.
Yes.
Physics comes into play here.
You've still not given me a reason why we need 3. You've still not countered my argument for why we need 3.
Because we need 3 because we need 2 because if we have 3 of the smaller of ships with smaller guns, they're not effective combatants against that threat profile the Japanese have.
If we have the 12-inch ones, they can easily deal with the Congo, especially if they're armored against the Congo's
14-inch
guns.
They can't.
And if we have 3, they'll likely be 2 out in the Dutchess Dinnies at any
but
one
you see,
time.
they have to close with the Congos.
No, they don't.
They do.
Just like the Alaskas wouldn't have to close with the Congos to kill them. Same thing. You're looking at modern 12-inch high-velocity guns here.
Yeah, against a modernized ship.
With no
the Congos aren't the same ship that comes out of the yards in World War One.
In terms of armor protection, they are.
Yeah, it's a case of if the 12-inch are so good, why did everyone get away from them as quickly as possible?
We're not built. If the 12-inch was so bad, why was it picked for the Alaskas? Why was it picked?
Picked for the Alaskas.
Why was it?
Because the Alaskas were a mistake, and the US Navy recognized they were a mistake.
Well, I've got to build ships. If I build 2 35,000-ton ships, the chance of them both being in service at once is nil. I will have one ship.
It's not though.
It is.
It's not.
That's how naval logistics
not.
works, Foxo. You can't just.
But it's
you
not,
can't just
though.
hand wave and say.
No. It is because, right, we have an exact example on how it works. It's called random repulse. They, for a long time, were the two Empire battle cruisers. They were shit. We need to show a flag in an area. Send them out as quick as possible.
One at a time, with one of them usually being in reserve, and then Hood was also around as well doing the
Yeah.
same thing.
And then,
Just 3
and then
ships.
when the British government saw tensions were starting to rise, they put them both into service, and both, like the Abyssinia crisis, were in the area. I mean, if the Dutch don't get taken by surprise during World War II, they know it's coming. They know the Japanese attack is coming. The thing is, they can do fuck all about it.
The thing.
But if they have these two ships, they can do something about
The
it.
problem that I've got is that I can't justify building 2 ships when I can get 3. I can't justify it. From a cost perspective, from an economy of scale perspective, it makes no sense.
On an economy of scale perspective, you're not building enough for an economy of scale.
With 3, you
An
are.
economy of scale is 8.
No, with
An economy of scale is 8.
when you're talking about battleships, you can get economy of scale with
It's
3.
8.
It's not.
It's 8.
It's not.
Why do you think the Royal Navy built as many 15-inch gunships as it did?
Because that's the
Why do you
UK.
think the Royal Navy wanted to build battleships in batches of 8?
Well, yes, because that's the RN. There's
Yeah,
not,
no,
there's
no,
not,
no.
there's
Right,
not
right,
just,
right,
there's
right.
not just
Do you
one
know- Do you know why the
economy of
RN
scale.
did that? Do you know why the RN did that? Because it's when the economy of scale kicked in.
That's
It's when Vickers could make enough barrels to make them cheap.
it's not just
It's
about
when you could repeat the an established process production to build armor plate for them. The difference between 2 and 3 is not that big. You need 6 to 8 to get it spun up.
we're talking about the Dutch here, not the British.
Yeah. And that's the point. You're not getting an economy of scale going from 2 to 3. So you're
I
getting
only
a
have
third
70
combat unit.
I only have 70,000 tons to play with. The IGN's
Yeah.
coming down with 3 capital ships. If I build
Yeah.
2 35,000 ton ships, I'm just. It's
Yeah.
still. It just doesn't. I can't.
Because it's a capital.
Every-
You go from
ev-
a capital ship
every
that can
rule-
stand 1-to-1
every
with anything
rule of
they know the
naval
Japanese have.
Every rule of naval procurement says you build a minimum of 3 ships per class if you can.
No, you either build 2 or 4, because it's 2 squads of 2.
Yeah, but if you have 2, you're never going to have. You're not even going to have 1 guaranteed in
Yeah.
service.
But you are though, because the Dutch aren't retarded. They see the war coming. They prepare for the war. They buy tanks for the war. They build the ships
if the crap about
for
having
the war
3
they
is
never
such,
coming.
if the crap about having 3 is just nonsense RBG, then why is it repeated by every navy across the fucking history of the planet then? As the
Because
nice
it's a
sweet
political
spot.
tool. Because it's an incredibly useful rule for peacetime. Because it means
Okay.
you can have,
then-
like what we do with our nuclear submarines, you can have 1 deployed, 1 in refit, 1 in mothball.
Again, same thing applies here. We
Yes,
can't.
But that's a
if I-
peacetime thing.
Yeah,
If war is coming, you
They
mobilize
don't
all
know
of them.
that in the 30s, though. They don't
They
know
do,
that.
though.
It's before the rise of Hitler. They
No,
don't know that.
Yeah, but by the late 30s they do though.
We're not building them in the late 30s. We're building them in the early 30s.
But they'll be in service. Because the fact is, capital ships are long lead items. Right?
Yeah, but if we lay them down in the early 30s, we're laying them down with the early 30s context, which means we still build the 3 smaller ones.
But you don't though. Because the early 30s context is we're dealing with Japan. And these smaller ships can't deal with Japan.
They can kill
One-on-one.
Congos.
They
That's all they
can't.
need to do.
No. They can give a Congo an equal fight. I'll bow to that. But they need overmatch. Because what's
they
stopping
don't.
Japan bringing 2 Congos, or 3 Congos,
Again,
or 4
well,
Congos,
if they build,
or bringing down the Nagatos?
if they build the larger ships, the same principle still stands. It's the same thing.
But they can overmatch
Yeah, but
a
here's-
single capital ship.
Yes, but here's the thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but thing is, the if we have 3 ships, they can be in 3 places at once. They can be leading 3 separate
But the
squadrons.
Dutch don't need to be in 3 places at once.
I think a also very problematic perspective of having 3 capital ships is that can the Dutch manpower-wise really afford that, especially with a land conflict in a la World War II happening again, the Navy getting a lot less precedence than Dutch defense forces in terms of ground forces, which I would say no, actually. The reason why you would justify heavily a 2 better ship than 3 inferior one sort of mentality is that a logistical tale of 3 ships compared to 2 ships is not a difference of, hey, maybe it's 3,000 crew instead of 2,000 crew. It's something along the lines of about, give or take, an expenditure of 30,000 people compared to 20,000 people.
Now that is a good reason. That's something I hadn't considered. That's
And-
a good reason.
And frankly speaking, if you're talking about, especially when you're talking about the Royal Navy, a huge asterisk is that Britain might be a very small country, but in terms of pure manpower, they throw a lot into the Royal Navy. This is not something that you can do with a lot of other nations, such as the Kriegsmarine, the Marine Nationale,
Or the Dutch in
because
this
these are
case. Or the Dutch in this case.
the Dutch in this case is because, frankly speaking, they don't have a large population. They're not dedicating it to the Navy, and even with
Okay.
conscription being particularly pretty common, you just don't have the manpower available to just say, even in expeditionary forces, 'cause that will drastically increase manpower requirements. You're talking about
Okay.
logistical tail of 1 to 5 instead of 1 to
Okay.
3.
Alright, so, okay then. So, I think you two have made your point quite clear. If I'm having to build... So, the ships I were building before was 23,000 tonners. If I'm building a pair of 35,000 ton ships, that changes... Let's say I'm designing them in 1930 to lay them down in 31, 32. That changes the ball game entirely, in terms of what I'm actually building.
Because as I see it, you've got the idea you had for the ship's correct. It's just you had the wrong main armament on it.
I mean, no, Foxo, if I'm going 35,000 tons, I can go even better than that, Chief. I can go with 9 15s in 3 triples, armoured against 15-inch guns at normal battle ranges, capable of 32 knots. And just be like, fight me, you fucking cowards.
I would contest that. Because you're looking at the similar tonnage range of the rebuilt Renown.
Well, yeah, but that's a rebuilt Renown. This is a new build ship with new
Yeah.
hydrodynamics. It's a different ball game entirely.
But it's, if you want 33 knots, you
But-
do have to go for a very big hole to displacement.
Oh yeah,
You need
completely.
a big ship.
Oh yeah, completely. But I will point out that we've got 30 Zero engines. We can perhaps trim things down if we. But anyway, I'm looking for at least 8, ideally 9, 15-inch guns. Although I might actually settle for 14s instead if I can get those good Bofors 14s. Because Bofors came up with a really nice 14 for the first Dutch battleship project in the 1910s. And then I know they still have the plans. If they can work that up into a new gun, that'll be lighter than a 15 and still be more than capable of kicking the Congos to the teeth in if it still have 1 extra barrel than the Congos do.
Suppose it comes down. It'll come down to industrial concerns of all things then. Because Vickers have production plants in the Netherlands, and they're building naval guns there.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's basically, do we go with...
and
do we-
Vickers have the 15s and the 14s.
yeah, I mean,
Do they export both of us, or do they go for the Dutch brand of Vickers? At that
this
point,
is
it's bribery.
yeah. I mean, I think if it was since it's down to me and they've asked what are my opinions, I'm going to go with the 914s for that little bit of extra weight saving. And I think you have made a point, Foxo, about speed. It's all right, Brackman. I'm just going to finish this question quickly because it is a good question actually. If I am going to do that, I'm going to go with the 914s. And I'll drop 2 knots of speed, because that'll save a fuck ton of weight. Because 31 knots, that's still got umbrage on the Congos, and anything that's not the Congo you can run away from. And to be honest with you, if you've got these 2 ships, even all 4 Congo, you're going to have to bring all 4 Congos down. And at that point, you've basically forced the Japanese to commit in a major way. You've already half won. Because if the Japanese are coming after you, they're fighting everyone else. Again, so it's not just about, it's not just about these ships versus the Congos. It's in the context of the wider conflict.
Yeah, you've essentially gone from you having to 2v1 a Congo to the Congos having to 2v1 you.
Yeah, basically, we reverse the situation. And even then, if it's a 2v1 versus these what are essentially fast... It's basically a KGV, except... sorry, it's not basically a KGV, but in terms of just thinking about it, it's basically a 14... It's... How would you describe it, actually? It's not like any ship, really. It's a completely different context.
It's a fat Renown.
Yeah, basically, with 914s.
Because the whole design of Renown is what you would want for this.
Yeah, 914s, 3 triples, 2 forward, 1 aft. Again, those same 100mm guns is dual-purpose battery. And then, of course, you've got, what's it called? Oh, Fleet losing his marbles here. Well, yeah, that as well. But... yeah, I think Moe puts it best. If the Japanese have got these pair of ships, they're committing the Kidabutai. Or, well, maybe not the Kidabutai, but they're at least bringing the pair of 20... They're at least bringing Rugio and the pair of 28-knot light carriers they've got. They're at least bringing those with the Congos. And I mean, if these 2 ships exist, Abdacom's got a hell of a lot more teeth to it. Especially if in the intervening period, they've been taken to Australia to receive a British radar fit, which they may do. Because the Dutch won't allow them to be sent to Europe, obviously, because they're like, no, they're staying here. But if the British say, do you want radar and fire control fits in, like, 3940, the Dutch will go, yes, please!
I mean, I think by 3940, you're probably a little bit too late trying to get anything significant.
Oh, no, Sierra, like, we're talking that they've been in service since about 34, 35. Like, they're built, they're in service. But, like,
I mean, even by that, you have to also acknowledge the fact that they're probably going to have they're not going to have priority over British units. So,
yeah, I
mean, especially if they're getting sent to the fucking Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's only one thing I would I've got an alternative for this ship, and that's to put 4 twins in it instead of 3 triples.
That could work with the length of the hull. Yeah, that could work.
Yeah, just narrow the beam and lengthen the hull. That way, sort of length of beam, you've got faster, more efficient ships.
Yeah, and also you've got more redundancy at that point. And at that point, you've basically got modern Congos, basically, but Dutch.
And at that point, you can put the 15-inch in.
Oh, would you stop trying to fit these ships in 15s?
It'd be really funny.
I'm sorry. If they're using the Vickers 15-inch guns, that means they have ammo commonality with the Royal Navy. Right. And if the Dutch are planning on aligning with the Royal Navy, so if they can use Royal Navy ammo.
Should note though, ammo commonality at this scale doesn't largely matter.
Yeah.
It matters. It matters when you are NATO and you have like the Turkish right next to the US in terms of random equipment. But if it's like if you want to solve any ammo consistencies with anything allied, you fix what the fuck was going on with the Royal Navy with the destroyers.
And also, Foxo,
my point is that if you're Dutch,
I would point
and you're planning on fighting about Indonesia, it's a lot easier to find British ammo in Australia than it is to find Dutch ammo.
I don't think
Foxo, that's the same whether they've got the Vickers 14 or the Vickers 15, because KGVs exist.
But the Vickers 14-inch ammo isn't all around the Empire at this point.
Neither is 15-inch ammo because
I don't.
And the hidden side of logistics is that you basically, especially for the Pacific in this context, a lot of battleships were not stationed. It's mostly cruisers, so they have to ship that in.
Yeah,
But the British are already shipping 15-inch rounds into
To, like-
Singapore, aren't they?
Maybe I don't have like an actual context off the top
Yeah,
of my head,
I mean-
but like
I mean,
Australia.
to be fair, if the Dutch are basing these ships out in the Far East, they won't have the dockyards for them. Obviously, or maybe they do. Maybe Sumatra has the dockyards for them because maybe it was part of the build out for them. You know, the Dutch put in either a floating dry dock or something in, Java or something for these ships.
It should also be heavily noted, if you really need this ammo share with the coastal batteries for 15-inch ammo, you have a very significant problem.
Yeah, I think Foxo.
But
I think
a lack
you're
of ammo
over.
is
I
one of
think-
many problems.
Yeah, I think you're
ABDA command hat.
I think you're overstating the ammo share. Anyway, but if we've got these pair of ships, that gives ABDA command some teeth. In fact, if we have these pair of ships out there, you probably won't see Force C being sent. As in,
You would.
no, sent north. Like, they'll probably group up with this pair of Dutch fast battleships to form a powerful core around which a joint command can center.
Because an interesting thing is, if they have these two ships and they're alive around the time Force C gets sent out, I don't think Prince of Wales gets sent out.
No, she probably
'Cause
doesn't. No, she
It's
probably
just
doesn't.
Repulse.
Yeah, it's probably
Because
just Repulse.
compared to these ships and Repulse, Prince of Wales is a lame duck.
No, she's not
she's
a lame duck,
slow.
she's slower. Yeah, but she's
She's
slow.
slow.
Yeah.
But when you've got a fleet that's running away at 33 knots, if you're running away at 28 knots, just
Yeah.
for simplicity's sake, you're the lame duck. The rest of the fleet has to slow down to your speed.
Yeah. It depends entirely. But beyond fleet deployments prior to the Japanese attack on the Dutch East Indies, it's impossible to say what would happen after that point. Right, folks. I hope you've all enjoyed. Dr. Clark has very kindly invited me to join him on Brew Ships this evening.
leading.
And I hope you've all had Foxo, as usual. It's been fantastic to have a few debates with you. Nothing gets my brain working harder. Love it.
Yeah, fuck you too.
Anytime, brother.
Hey,
Anytime.
Hey, okay, Sierra, you know you're valuable. You know you're fucking.
No, I don't.
nice. Yes,
No.
you do. Fuck.
I'm just a
Alright,
a
don't
regular moderator.
Don't cry.
I'm not crying. I'm just like, no, I don't get acknowledged. Go away.
No, you're valuable, Sierra. You're.
I'm gonna host Steel Division 2.
Oh, wait.
Actually- Hey, wait, hold on. Wait, we could do Warno on Saturday.
Yeah.
Wait,
Oh,
didn't
fuck
you make
yes.
the mistake of
Yes.
joining the military,
Sierra.
What, me?
No, Sierra doesn't join the military. Sierra, Yep, there's Dr.
I am-
Clark pinging me.
Would you like to take over? Fuck no, I got work today. I'm just here to point and laugh.
Right, okay, look, I gotta go now. Dr. Clark is paging me. Take care, folks. I'll catch you next time.
We're doing
Oh,
Warno on Saturday. Yippee,
Yeah.
this is where I advertise.
Hey, Sierra.
Noel?
Hey, Sierra.
For Noel?
Once I've done War Thunder, do you want to double ping it?
Absolutely.
Both Sierra Saturday and the community game night rolls will get a big Warno crowd in.
I mean, hey, it's full release, baby.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it for the memes.
Right, please. Do you know the link for Brew Ships? The website is.
I will. Oh, never mind. I'm being invited, but yes, I will post a link to Brew Ships once I have. I'm just gonna very quickly end this, and I'll
Bye.
put a link in Theatre at Sea. Goodbye, everybody.